Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program here in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Adam Keller. And if you have anything to add this morning, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. We'll say that we'll open the phone lines during overtime, the second half of the program, or online only second half, which you can find on YouTube, Facebook, and Means TV. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. Appreciate it. I do want to acknowledge the obvious that our fearless leader, Jacob Morrison, is out today. So Whitney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, appreciate my union sister, Whitney Washington, here in the studio with me. So we've got a lot to talk about today, a lot in the news. We'll be talking about free speech, censorship, retaliation, all that, all kinds of news relevant for working people. In the main show, we're excited to have an interview lined up about a new campaign right here in Alabama. Looking forward to that. And in the second half of the show, in overtime, we'll have some updates on some major campaigns and strikes happening across the country and across the South. Dive into a little bit of labor history. Jacob's out today, so we're talking about some of the stuff I want to talk about. And that includes history, of course. All that and more today. So let's get into it.
So, Adam, this week was an important anniversary for you in your labor movement journey, right?
It was, yeah. There's a lot of news to get to today, obviously. But, yeah, I wanted to start off today on a personal note. I think it can be helpful to know someone's story if you're going to work together for positive change. And if you've chosen to spend some of your valuable time listening to this show, when you could be doing any number of things, I'd like to think that we are connected on some level by a shared concern for the state of our people and the state of our society, and maybe a shared demand for a future that we can really believe in. So this week did mark 5 years since I was fired by the AEA, the Alabama Education Association, where I'd spent over 5 years representing the employees of Huntsville City Schools. And to be honest, I didn't think I'd get that job. I was only 25 at the time. I'd only been teaching a few years, but there weren't many educators, especially non-tenured ones in this area, who were trying to organize and speak up and fight back against the budget cuts and the corporate-style reform and privatization that we were facing. I started teaching in 2012, which you labor folks out there may recall was the same year the Chicago Teachers Union went on their really epic strike for the school Chicago students deserved. And that really helped me because it helped me see the potential power we had if we blended workplace organizing, community coalition building, and political advocacy. And so that really inspired me, and it got me thinking here in Huntsville, Alabama. I looked around at all the issues that me and my coworkers were facing and the issues my students and their families were facing. And I wondered who was going to say something, who was going to do something. If not now, then when? And if not us, then who? So I said, damn it, I guess I will. And I got active. And I didn't really know what I was doing. And I didn't grow up around unions or organizing, very far from it, really. But I was reading a lot. I was trying to teach myself how to make change and trying to connect with people who I thought could help. And I already knew at that time that AEA shied away from being a real labor union and opted for the quote-unquote professional organization approach. But it was the closest thing that I had as a young educator, and it's where the workers were already at, and so that's where I went. And when that field staff job at AEA opened up, some folks encouraged me to apply. I wasn't their first choice, but I was the one who ended up getting hired. And so I walked out of the classroom, and the very next week I was in the superintendent's office representing some of our 1,500 or so members. And shortly after that, I was on the front page of the Huntsville Times calling out the administration of crooked Casey Rudensky for their mistreatment of employees. And man, was it on from there. Turns out they don't really appreciate that when you call them out in the newspaper. And that was a learning experience. And so, I won some fights, lost plenty more, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about advocacy, coalitions in the community, working with media, organizing, representation, how to win without collective bargaining or formal union rights. And I also learned about, the contradictions and the difficulties of being a rank and file reformer at heart who takes a staff job, rightly or wrongly, thinking they can make a difference. And I know there are folks listening out there who, have had similar experiences. So I got to cut my teeth in organizing by fighting a billionaire-backed boss who, I must admit, he did earn my begrudging respect for his sheer creativity in wrongdoing, who, by the way, resigned mired in controversy with less than 48 hours notice, days after our opposition movement flipped both of the school board seats up for election. So that was huge. We upset the entire local business establishment. But I also learned how we failed to secure and capitalize on that victory, as well as how jokers like him, so often fail upwards, because this corporate bully in particular went on to work for the first Trump administration, though he did get his butt kicked in 2022 when he ran for Congress. And of course, throughout all of this experience, I learned some of the messy side of politics. But during my time on staff with the AEA, I got very involved with our staff union, an affiliate of the National Staff Organization, or NSO, the union for employees of the National Education Association and its affiliates throughout the country. And this was cool for me because it allowed me to learn more about private sector unions, collective bargaining, the NLRB, and all that kind of thing. But I also learned how that kind of workplace activism can come with consequences. I know what it feels like to face retaliation for standing up for your beliefs. I know what it's like to be blacklisted from an industry you love. After all, I went to college to be a high school history teacher, but as you can imagine, there were no school districts around here in this climate interested in hiring a militant labor agitator and well-documented troublemaker to go teach their children social studies. And believe me, I did try. I put in dozens and dozens of applications. Ironically, I was on the front page of the Huntsville Times fighting for our members the day I was fired. The night before, we'd packed the school board meeting, and the school board president had actually asked to meet with me and all but begged me to call off the dogs. Right? We had cranked up the heat, and it was starting to work. This was in the middle of the pandemic. This was fall 2020, and the educators were as upset as I'd ever seen them. There were more issues, more complaints, more calls than I'd ever received. And we were starting to gain steam, and I felt like we really had the potential to extract some real wins for the workers. But, unfortunately, all that organizing came to a halt when I was fired. And, it's not that I didn't see it coming. I wanted to be a labor organizer, and they wanted an insurance salesman. So it was never going to work, and I was miserable. But my union did defend me, and I was grateful to have a union to defend me. The National Staff Organization's VP of Defense at the time, Mike Boyer, he came all the way from the other side of the country to represent me at arbitration. It was the kind of takedown I'd seen happen to other workers, where your management just throws everything against the wall to see what will stick, no matter how silly some of it may be. And frankly, Mike wiped the floor with management's attorney. And to my complete lack of surprise, we also confirmed in the hearing that AEA management was in cahoots with Huntsville City Schools management to shut me up. But we still lost anyway, right? And as too many workers know, these legalistic processes are, they're better than nothing, but they're far from an assurance of justice. So it was a tough stretch after that. I had to cash in all my retirement. I was doing whatever odd jobs I could, whatever I could find. Substitute teaching, in some cases literally shoveling crap. But it was my relationships in the movement that kept me afloat. From those odd jobs from the friends to getting plugged into the local stagehands union, IATSE 900. And I didn't even know what a stagehand was. I told them up front, I could barely hold a wrench, but I could write a hell of a grievance if they needed one of those. And they welcomed me with open arms and showed me the ropes, literally in this case. And around that time, two union brothers in the area I'd connected with and really respected, Jacob Morrison and David Story, asked me to join this show, the Valley Labor Report. They were looking for someone to step in for David as a co-host and a co-producer. And I reckon when they made their list of labor activists in North Alabama who were willing to spend every Saturday morning ranting and raving on the airwaves about workers' rights, must not have been a super long list because they called me. But I'm really glad they did, because I'm grateful to have this outlet, not only to speak up for working folks, but to make all sorts of connections in the labor movement across the world. We've been able to interview so many amazing people in this project, and it's brought a lot of amazing folks into my life and, allowed me to contribute to the movement in new ways. And we've grown our content, our crew, and our reach over the years, growing this grassroots media project into what is now the largest labor talk show in the South, and I'm really proud of our efforts there. But by summer a couple years ago, I was down to my last few bucks. I wasn't sure how I was going to pay the next month's bills. And then wouldn't you know it, I was offered 2 jobs on the same day. And even better, I ended up being able to do both. And I'm really grateful that folks gave me a chance. So first I did an organizing fellowship with a really cool organization called Jobs to Move America. They led a successful campaign to win a community benefits agreement, or a CBA, at New Flyer, which is a clean bus manufacturer in Anniston, with over 500 workers there. So I got to help out the early stages of the union campaign with IUE, CWA, got to learn more about new organizing, and that also connected me with Communications Workers of America, which would soon prove very helpful for me. And I am proud to say that those workers did win their union and a really solid first contract. So it was cool to play my own very small part in that important victory for Alabama workers and workers throughout the South, and also to get to experience the power of a CBA in action, which was really a remarkable thing. So I then transitioned into the Northeast Alabama organizer position for Alabama Arise, which is a statewide nonprofit fighting for better policies for the people, especially those marginalized by poverty. And I honestly always hoped I'd land there someday. I'd been a member of Arise for years throughout my time in politics. I always respected the organization and its work. And I quickly learned what a great group of folks are involved, from staff to leadership to the membership involved. Arise is a little different than a lot of policy shops because there is, a membership base, right? It's a membership organization. There's nearly 2,000 individual members and over 150 churches, nonprofits, unions, other organizations that are member groups that have made the choice to join a coalition. And in turn, they get to determine the issue priorities and the board. So, given my union background, this was obviously a model that really appealed to me. And considering what we've already accomplished at Arise over the years, over its many years in service here in Alabama, and what we're still accomplishing, I think there's just a tremendous amount of potential if we grow and strengthen that coalition. So really happy to be doing that work. And it didn't take long after I started at Arise before, coworkers were talking to me and bending my ear. They said they've been thinking about a union for a long time, and since I was like the most union-obsessed guy they'd ever met, could I help? And so we became the organizing committee, and within a couple months, we unionized the staff of Alabama Arise with CWA 3908 out of Montgomery. And, given my past and given my precarity, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about all that. But we were met with immediate voluntary recognition, and since then we've worked collaboratively with the Arise leadership to negotiate our first collective bargaining agreement. And that was a big responsibility, but also a real learning experience to represent my coworkers on the bargaining team and learn from the folks at CWA who've been great to work with as well. and proud to say our bargaining unit has 100% membership, and we hope we've led by example for other nonprofits across the state and across the region. And, I didn't get punished for these efforts. Hell, in fact, I got promoted earlier this year. I'm in a new role called Worker Power Campaign Director. And what I get to do is really build bridges between our policy advocacy, our membership base in the community, and the broader labor movement to try to empower working people who are organizing for better lives here in Alabama, from the workplace to the State House. So as you can imagine, this is right up my alley. It's a great opportunity for me to really, bring my skills and knowledge and relationships towards building more worker power in this state, which desperately, desperately needs it. So, I still work stagehand gigs when I can, and it's really an honor to represent my IATSE 900 siblings at the North Alabama Area Labor Council. And it's really sad to say, but this important institution here, which is the regional AFL-CIO Federation of Local Labor Unions, it had been allowed to go defunct. But since rechartering around 5 years ago, several of us, including you, Whitney, and including, of course, Jacob, we've been able to work together with other folks and really grow this thing from 4 initial affiliated locals to now 12. We're active in all sorts of coalition spaces. We've dipped our toes into Huntsville politics a little bit, and we've talked to everybody from high school students to church congregations in the area. And there's a lot more to be done. We're still very early in the development of this labor council, but really proud of what we've accomplished so far. And again, I see tremendous potential power there because, where else are you going to have cashiers and construction workers and rocket scientists and engineers all coming together in the same place to strategize and organize and collaborate, right? There's a lot of strength in that. If the logic of unions is that there's strength in numbers, that we're stronger as a collective than we are on our own, the same logic applies to our locals, right? The more unions work with other unions, the more we come together and build a union of unions, the stronger we're going to be as a movement. And we know that the businesses do that. Industry does that, right? They come together in chambers and business councils. So our unions do have to do a better job of that kind of work. And, especially here in Alabama, we're far behind in terms of a coherent labor movement with the ecosystem and infrastructure we really need to be successful. So that makes the work we're trying to do, building these local labor councils, so important. And I can't encourage listeners enough to get involved in revitalizing these institutions. If you're already in an affiliated local, or even if you're not a union member and you just want to build out community solidarity and coalition, these are really important institutions. So, I wear a lot of hats in the movement these days, but it's all connected by a desire to see a better world for working people. My daughter and her generation and all those coming after, they are counting on us. I really do have faith that when everyday people unite around our common interests, that we can do amazing things. We have such a rich history in Alabama and beyond of people power bringing positive change. And it's up to all of us to do what we can to win that better world that we deserve. And, sometimes it does seem like a really distant past, but what if we could build a mass working class movement rooted in love, justice, and solidarity for this era, for our era? It's been a tough and weird journey these past 5 years for me, but it's gotten me to where I'm at today, where I do what I'm passionate about with good folks I trust. And what's kept me moving forward isn't just my passion for worker power or my anger at the state of the world or my desire to win. The most important thing has been the people who've had my back, from my wife and family to the many friends and comrades I've made along the way. We the people can't win without collective action, collective organization, and collective power. And you can't do that alone, right? By definition, you just can't. So I want to thank all of you for allowing me this point of personal privilege today. And I want to send my love and solidarity to all the folks that I've had the honor to work alongside with over the years as we've struggled for progress and fought for a better Alabama that is not only possible but necessary for all of us. And, I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with the folks I'm supposed to be doing it with. And I'm excited to work with even more of y'all to build power for the working class. So, yeah, that was my moment of personal privilege today. And hope I didn't bore everybody too much, but it was an impactful anniversary. And considering the themes of censorship and retaliation and all that we're talking about today, it just sort of made sense for me to share a little bit of my story.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I did have a follow-up question. Is like, would you do anything differently?
Would I do anything differently? I don't know. I've thought about that a lot. Obviously, I'd like to think that I'm a little bit wiser now with some age and experience. And so I probably would not do everything I've done in the past the same way. That said, this struggle that I've been through, in a way, it got me to where I'm at right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
If things had turned out differently, I don't know if I would have had the opportunities I've had over the years, from this show to, the unions that I'm part of and everything else. So I don't know. I mean, I know it's cliche. People say things happen for a reason, but, maybe they do. And like I said, I feel like, as hard as it's been in some areas, I've landed on my feet and I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I really appreciate y'all tuning in today. There's a lot to talk about. We, of course, have to acknowledge some of the obvious going on in the country today in terms of discussions around free speech and censorship. And this is not the show to necessarily find hot takes about Charlie Kirk or Jimmy Kimmel. That's not really our jam. We're a labor talk show. We talk about labor issues and news and topics relevant for working people, especially workers who are trying to organize. But obviously, freedom of speech, all of our First Amendment rights, huge, longstanding priority for the labor movement. And we are in an era where we're seeing a wave of censorship and a lot of people facing discipline for their speech. We'll talk more about that in overtime. And as a student of history, there's real Red Scare vibes in this country right now. And, I'm personally not necessarily a fan of Jimmy Kimmel. I don't really watch late night talk shows. And I will even grant that I can understand why some people have been offended by his comments. But personally, and speaking also as someone who's been active in unions for many years and has had to represent members who've been in trouble for their speech and their social media content, things like that, I can't help but think it's pretty wild that there are a lot of folks who go on TV and go on the radio and say all kinds of false and hateful rhetoric. And that includes radio stations with FCC licenses, by the way, right? There are folks who go on TV and go on the radio and say all kinds of vile stuff without consequences. We have government officials who do not hesitate to lie whenever they feel like it. So there are a lot of unions in the entertainment industry who have spoken out about this incident and some of the broader patterns at work, and we'll get to some of that, some of the union reactions. But briefly, just want to touch on some of the timeline of what's happened and some of the community reactions. So we do know that the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC chair, did issue a public threat to take action against stations for airing Jimmy Kimmel for a joke that offended people. And after that, we saw that Kimmel was suspended. And so whatever you think of him, whatever you think of his comments, that troubles me as someone who believes in the First Amendment. And, obviously the company chose what they thought was the easy way to comply and to cave. And we're seeing that happen across the country with all sorts of institutions, right? We have professors and academics being fired across the country. It's happening in a lot of areas. A lot of people are getting in trouble. A lot of people are getting in trouble for things they've posted. And, again, as someone who has represented folks in trouble for things like that, I think we can acknowledge multiple layers to it. On the one hand, like, just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. And most of us have been guilty of saying things publicly or on social media that we regret. Either we were misinformed or maybe we were upset and spoke out of emotion, right? Things that we would take back. And so lots of us have done that. We've said things we regret publicly or on social media. And a lot of people have faced discipline for that kind of thing. I represented educators, and of course, educators are a key demographic that gets targeted for their speech outside of work because they're bound to a code of ethics, a professional code of ethics, and they have a certificate that's regulated by the state, right? So, arguably there's a public interest there in what they do and what they say. So, I can acknowledge that sometimes folks say things that they shouldn't. That doesn't necessarily, I think, always mean that they should lose their job or face, a cut in pay. I think, to take away someone's livelihood is a higher threshold, and it should really, you better really come at it with a strong case. That what they're doing is some kind of detriment to their ability to perform their work. That's my opinion on it. And, I know I've seen folks who have been disciplined for their speech, I think unfairly. And I say that in regards to people across the political spectrum, right? People, conservative, liberal, leftist, anything in between. I do think that oftentimes, my background in education is a lot of times HR departments would have folks take screenshots of people's comments and send it in to them. And it would be really easy for 2 or 3 emails to kind of start a witch hunt on somebody. And so I think, folks often are overregulated by their bosses in terms of what they say outside of work. But we can also grant that there's a lot of stuff that people say that they shouldn't. That's not helpful, right? But what we do know in the case of Kimmel is the FCC, made this comment. All right, the FCC chair Brendan Carr openly threatened to revoke the broadcast license of any station airing Kimmel's show. That was the morning of September 17th. By the afternoon, right, Nexstar Media Group, which is a big TV conglomerate, said its local ABC affiliates would not air Kimmel's show. And then by the evening, ABC Disney announced that they are pulling Kimmel's show off the air entirely. So that was kind of the timeline. Seems obvious there was some government pressure to do that. Again, I think there are people on other stations, on other shows that are saying all kinds of crazy stuff. Whether you think they have the right to, it certainly seems like there's unequal standards of discipline, which is something we would look for, in a union case if we were representing a member. And the last thing I'll say on this before we get to our first break is that there are a lot of folks in the community who are talking about boycotting ABC and Disney. I received an email from the group Indivisible, and they were calling on folks to do that. And I mean, really encouraging their folks to take action. And so we'll see what happens with that. Boycotts are coming back in practice, it seems like. There's a couple boycotts we may mention later in the show that some unions have engaged in. So all the entertainment unions put out statements, basically. When we get to the overtime discussion on this, we'll touch on what the union said specifically about this, because my union, IATSE, put out a joint statement. The Writers Guild, most of them, American Federation of Musicians even. So most of them did have something to say. They do have concerns about what this means and kind of a broader pattern of censorship and attacks on the First Amendment, and really that in collaboration with corporate power. So we'll touch on all that in overtime. We've got a great rest of the show lined up, and we're about to go to our first break, but we'll be right back, y'all.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studio here in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Adam Keller. My co-host and fellow agitator, Jacob Morrison, is out today, so I'm glad my union sister, Whitney Washington, is here with me today in the studio. And today on the show, we're talking about free speech and censorship and retaliation. We're also talking about an exciting new campaign here in Alabama. Got a great interview lined up here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk a little bit of labor history later in overtime. So a whole lot on the show today on today's Valley Labor Report. And if you want to be part of the program, we do have a phone number, and the line will be open at 11 a.m. Central. That's when the second half of the program, Overtime, which airs online only through Means TV, YouTube, and Facebook, it will start at 11. We'll open up the phone lines then. You can call 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. And you can leave us a voicemail anytime throughout the week or right now if you want to. We'd love that. We love voicemails. We appreciate getting reports from across the South, across the country, what's happening in your local, what's happening with grievances in your workplace, community organizing, election updates, anything you've got. We'd love to get your voicemails. So if you haven't gotten enough of us by the time we wrap here today, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, TVLR.fm. But of course, we're on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. And just a reminder that your support keeps us on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining member of the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. And we do have a lot of cool merch for sale still at tvlr.fm/store. You want to check that out for sure. And Jacob had a note that he did send out merch orders a few weeks ago. So if you had ordered anything from us, this summer, if you haven't received it yet, definitely reach out. Let us know. And last thing, if you're a member of a union, you should also get your local to sponsor the show. We would really appreciate that. You can reach out to us for more details on that. And let me also add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. And of course, we are not media professionals, just some diehard union activists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And let's get right into last week in Southern labor. This is what happened in the U.S. South and the colonies over the past week when it comes to union organizing and other working class issues. So we'll start with new campaigns. Really excited about this. 52 workers at North Hill Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Birmingham, Alabama, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, RWDSU. The employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 65 workers at Tom Thumb grocery store in Dallas, Texas, demonstrated support for the union with the United Food and Commercial Workers UFCW Local 1000 and 540. At another location in Duncanville, Texas, with 111 workers, another location in Dallas, Texas, with 34 workers, and another location in DeSoto, Texas, with 102 workers. So way to go, UFCW out there in Texas. The employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 116 workers at Albertsons in Fort Worth, Texas, demonstrated support for unionization with UFCW Local 1000 and 540. Another one for them. 380 workers at Genesis Logistics in Stafford, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Teamsters Local 322. 380 workers at 3M Company in Springfield, Missouri, filed a petition to hold an election with the United Steelworkers, USW. 80 workers at Bacardi Bottling Corporation and Distribution Center in Jacksonville, Florida, filed a petition to hold an election with Teamsters Local 947. And 19 workers at Johnson Brothers in Irving, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with Teamsters Local 745. Jumping to campaign updates, 15 U.S. senators wrote a letter to Wells Fargo demanding they cease their, quote, significantly more aggressive anti-union campaign as the Communication Workers of America, CWA, continues to win elections and build pressure. In election results, 53 workers at TransDev Services in Rosenberg, Texas, voted 31-2 in favor of the union with the Transport Workers Union of America, TWU. 13 workers at Starbucks in Dallas, Texas, voted 7-6 in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United. 21 workers at another location in Columbia, Missouri, also voted in favor of the union, 11-1. 52 workers at UNFI in Richburg, South Carolina, voted 27-15 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 509. 330 workers at HCA Florida Fort Walton Destin Hospital in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, voted 215-115 in favor of unionization with the National Nurses United, NNU. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. 64 workers at Sibelco in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, voted against the union. The tally was not on the NLRB site, but it was a United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, election. 174 workers at another location in Bakersville, North Carolina, also voted against unionization, 55-100. 175 workers at Highline Warren in Glendale, West Virginia, withdrew their petition for a union election with the Teamsters, Local 697, and the NLRB dismissed a decertification petition to remove the Teamsters Local 89 as the union representing 6 workers at IMI Irving Materials in Scottsville, Kentucky. Moving on to grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases. Labor Notes has a great piece out just the past week or so, by a friend of the show, Bill Berry, on how to defend members from politicized firings in a union workplace. He concludes by saying, quote, ultimately, the just cause section of the union contract offers protection for all workers. It's important for a steward to stress this point to other union members who may be inclined, due to the nature of the off-duty episode, to let the boss get rid of a coworker without making a convincing case. Enforcing the contract for one is enforcing the contract for all. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed a lower court decision, now deciding in favor of Trader Joe's that the branded merchandise of their workers' union, Trader Joe's United, infringes on the company's intellectual property. In strikes and bargaining, the Chattanooga Area Labor Council is pushing the Chattanooga City Council to pass a resolution supporting Volkswagen workers as they negotiate for a fair contract following the workers' recent unionization with the UAW, United Auto Workers, Local 42. As Boeing workers in St. Louis unionized with the International Association of Machinists, IAM, continue their strike, other area unions are coming out to support them on the picket line. And again, we'll talk more about that one later in the show. Workers at Starbucks are approaching 4 years without a contract, and their union is now threatening an all-out strike in the fall if they don't get one soon. Workers at American Consolidated Natural Resources, Inc., and Iron Synergy, which has locations in West Virginia and whose members are unionized with the UMWA, ratified a new 5-year collective bargaining agreement that the union claims includes, quote, significant improvements in wages and other contract provisions with no changes to health care or other benefits. Members of Unite Here, Local 23, who are on strike at Hilton Hotels in Houston, announced that they will remain on strike until September 20th. Teamsters at Southern Glazers in Florida ratified a new 4-year collective bargaining agreement that the union says contains wage increases, a Teamsters health plan, and more. After 2 weeks on the picket line, UAW members at GE in Kentucky and Ohio ratified a new contract. The union says they won on their 3 major issues: securing strong job protection language, protecting workers from rising health care costs, and getting more paid time off, along with raises. United Campus Workers, UCW, CWA, at Berea College in Berea, Kentucky, won sick leave for their members at the college. Really exciting to see that. In political and legislative updates, of course, we mentioned it earlier, late night host Jimmy Kimmel has been canceled by the FCC for speech they didn't like. First Amendment concerns aside, several entertainment unions also pointed out the job-killing nature of the move. RWDSU came out against expanding H-2B programs to meatpacking, highlighting a recent Economic Policy Institute report that such a move would lower wages. Congress members in the U.S. House introduced the Faster Labor Contracts Act last week, a pared-down version of the PRO Act. While the PRO Act would have been an overhaul of the entire collective bargaining system, the Faster Labor Contracts Act would focus on bringing employers to the table after workers win a union election, imposing mandatory bargaining within 10 days of a win, mediation after 90 days, and mandatory binding arbitration after 30 days of failed mediation. The Teamsters' Sean O'Brien is the primary driver behind the push. Legislation was introduced in the Senate earlier this year. And in internal union affairs, another union reform caucus just dropped this week. Really exciting to hear about this. This one is called the Caucus of Rank and File Electrical Workers, CREW, within the IBEW. Keith Brower Brown writes about it for Labor Notes. Definitely check that out. RWDSU members at Treehouse Foods in Farmers Branch, Texas, flexed a rarely used contract provision requiring company-paid-for training for stewards and supervisors, covering multiple topics, including grievance administration and resolving workplace conflict. That's all we have for last week in Southern Labor this week. Just a reminder, there's a lot we didn't get to on the air, so you have to subscribe to the newsletter. Go to tvlr.fm/contact. You can get on our list, and you can check out the full report of everything happening throughout the week in the union world in the South. So I do believe we have our next guest on the line. Awesome. So we've got our next guest on the line. Matt Fullone is an organizer with Jobs to Move America. Matt, welcome to the program.
Adam, how's it going? How are you today?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And I want to start with just a really basic question that's going to set up the rest of this conversation, which is, what is a community benefits agreement?
Well, that's a great question, Adam. So a community benefits agreement is a legally enforceable agreement between private companies and coalitions of community and labor groups. Community benefits agreements are used to ensure a wide range of high road job standards, community benefits, environmental mitigations, and equity measures. So they're the fact that they are legally enforceable and not just something that a company can ignore or avoid in the future is what makes them so powerful.
And do you have examples of where those have been used around the country or even here in Alabama?
I do. Yeah. So they've been used for major development projects across the United States at this point. So projects like, if you're familiar, there's a new Major League Soccer stadium being constructed in Nashville, Tennessee. That one is being done under a community benefits agreement. Airport expansions like at LAX, large real estate developments. They've also been used for solar and offshore wind farms. Facebook even used a CBA for an office expansion in California. So they're increasingly being mandated for projects receiving public funding or subsidies at local, state, and even federal levels. There is an important distinction, though, that I need to mention. So not all community benefit agreements are real. So not all of them are negotiated with the coalition on one side of the table and the company on the other. A real CBA, a CBA like the ones that Jobs to Move America are when two sides really negotiate. So not everyone gets exactly what they want, but if the coalition stays firm, they can win real advances for job quality and equity measures. So one community benefit agreement in Alabama was for a company in Anniston, Alabama, company that makes electric buses called New Flyer. So we negotiated a CBA with them in 2022. So one of the problems with New Flyer was they had a real lack of opportunity for historically disadvantaged people, folks with records, Black voters, women workers, folks with a barrier to getting a job, So in the CBA, they agreed to, with Jobs to Move America, they agreed to 45% of all new hires being from historically disadvantaged groups. So a huge gain for the people in that community. They also agreed to ban the box. So if you're not familiar with what that is, they were no longer going to ask if you were a felon or if you had been arrested or convicted of a felony on their employment applications. They also agreed to better training, better safety training. They agreed to start a pre-apprenticeship program to help all workers advance. When it comes to what we were able to accomplish with New Flyer, things might be a little bit different with Neptune. The problems might be a little bit different. So the CBA might be different. So we hope to address those specific concerns.
Gotcha. And can you tell me a little bit more about the coalition? Who's involved, what are the goals, and, obviously the name of the coalition?
Absolutely. So the name of our coalition is called Good Neighbors Alabama. So the coalition is composed of labor groups, advocacy groups, community organizations, and they all share a commitment to building a stronger and more just Alabama. So the members of our coalition are Alabama Arise, Alabama Possible, A Better Balance, Conservation Alabama, Faith in Action Alabama, Greater Birmingham Ministries, the NAACP, North Alabama Area Labor Council, and United Fair Economy. So for this year, Good Neighbors Alabama, the goal for this year is to continue to work towards a community benefits agreement with Neptune, and then of course to continue to fight for clean air, water, racial justice, fair wages, safe working conditions, and the right to organize without fear or retaliation.
Yeah, so that touches on a bit about the report that you released this week. What motivated JMA to focus on Neptune and Tallahassee for this report?
So the first thing is, everybody on this team, we're all Alabamians and we care about our neighbors. We want all the big corporations in our state to be good neighbors too. Neptune is a company making water infrastructure products, water meters, which creates a public good, clean drinking water, to communities and to towns and cities all over the country. At JMA, our motto is public goods for the most public good, which means we want to see the creation of those public goods lead to benefits in the places where those products are manufactured, like Tallahassee. So good jobs, a clean environment, high road behaviors. With Neptune in particular, a significant amount of the workers that we've spoken with have given their stories about what it's like to work there at Neptune. So they have a significant amount of the workers have described long hours. On average, they're working 55 to 75 hours every week, which of course takes them away from their families and leaves their bodies tired. I spoke to a worker who's been there for 30 plus years. And when I asked him what he would do if they weren't working as many hours as they were, with a tear in his eye, he said, spend more time watching my kids grow up. Obviously, that's a huge issue. Another issue that most workers brought up at Neptune was unfair treatment in some shape or form, whether it's favoritism, inconsistent discipline, racism, sexism. Nearly 70% of the workers that we spoke with at Neptune reported experiencing or witnessing unfair treatment. One worker that I spoke with told me she was told when she was asking about a promotion, and quote, "It's a man's world." So those are the things that some of the workers are dealing with. I mean, there's also some other significant issues. When it comes to wages, there's a very, very, very flat wage growth for the people who have been there the longest. We've spoken with some people that have been there 30, 40 years. And when you take into account inflation, their buying power, their wages, they're making less money than they were 20 years ago. Wage gaps due to occupational segregation leave some workers making less because they don't have the ability for promotion within the facility. Serious injuries are another huge issue at that facility. So with all of these issues we've discovered while speaking with their workers, we've come up with a clear list of recommendations for Neptune based on the findings of the report. It's very important to us, and we feel very important to the community of Tallahassee as well. So within our letter to them from the coalition, we've made some pretty serious recommendations. We hope to negotiate ambitious and measurable hiring and promotion goals to ensure people with historically disadvantaged groups are offered jobs and, most importantly, opportunities for promotion, commitments to new and accessible in-house training, a joint initiative to grow next generation of factory leadership in highly paid positions so they do have the ability to be promoted from within, commitments to allow workers to speak freely amongst themselves with representatives of nonprofit organizations without fear. That is something that we find very important right there. A lot of the workers that we have spoken with, almost to the T, have described a culture of fear within the facility that leaves them without the ability to suggest alternatives or suggest ways to make things better, to suggest being able to coordinate with their coworkers to try to bring change to that facility. All of them say they have fear when it comes to those types of things. We've also recommended a commitment to allow employees to attend training sessions conducted on site to increase OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 authorized workers. And then, of course, when it comes to the environmental aspect of what they do, commitments to adopt industry best practices for the disposal of toxic wastes that are measurable and enforceable. We ask for all of these things because we know CBAs lead to fairer local economies, safer workplaces, better environmental stewardship, and respect and dignity for the workers and their neighbors.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. There was a lot to process. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to hear a little bit more about is the environmental section. And you touched on it there in terms of the recommendation, but could you talk a little bit more about what's going on with the environmental impact there?
Yeah, sure. So, and I got to be real careful here.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want you to say anything you shouldn't say, but maybe speak to kind of the regulation and the how it's supposed to work in theory, right? Like, in theory, companies are supposed to play by certain rules, and they're not supposed to do anything that would be harmful to the community. Is there a lot of regulation in the state of Alabama for toxic disposal practices? Like, is that something that we run into, or is it more like we're hoping to address issues, through the CBA process?
Yeah, it's more of the latter. So we're hoping to address some of the issues just based on historically what Neptune has done with some of their chemical waste. We've spent a lot of time digging through EPA records, ADEM records, to try to determine where some of their waste is going. We've discovered that although they advertise themselves as a lead-free producer, there are certain years, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but there are certain years where there's significant amounts of lead being produced within that factory and then being dumped outside of that factory. Neptune uses a waste pond directly across the street that isn't necessarily built or made to accept the type of chemical waste that Neptune is producing. So we are trying to work with the state, and we're trying to work with environmental organizations to try to determine, what the process is, what should be done. And we, excuse me. And we also want to work with Neptune to create positive solutions for that chemical waste, to make sure that it isn't going into, the land in the area, the land in Tallahassee. It's not going into the Tallapoosa River, which then feeds drinking water to Talladega, Alabama. So we just want to make sure that any waste that's being created within the factory is being dealt with properly.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, you can check out that report, and that's at goodneighborsalabama.org. And we'll mention that again if you want to find out a little bit more and dig in a little deeper. But, you mentioned partnering with the company, trying to find a positive approach, trying to find ways to partner for positive solutions. Why are you taking that approach?
So, I mean, we know these issues are serious, and we hope Neptune takes them seriously as well. So we want to stay positive. We hope that Neptune sits down with us and has a straight conversation to come up with, real solutions for the issues identified in this report. We want Tallahassee to be as great as it can be. Stop. That's the main concern. And of course, as we've mentioned a couple of times, we're also good neighbors, Alabama. So good neighbors should be positive, should treat each other with respect, and should work together on solutions affecting both sides.
That's right. Yeah. And I think, it is only natural that we expect large employers and big companies in our communities to be good neighbors and to, as you said, give the town the opportunity to thrive and to be the best it can be.
So Monday was a big day for the campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened and what's next?
Monday was a very big day for the campaign. So there were a couple different things that the coalition did on that day. Most importantly is we, as good neighbors do, walked up to the front door of the Neptune facility in Tallahassee and asked if we could speak with the person in charge, as good neighbors would do. So we walked up to the door, we knocked, a representative from Neptune came out and asked us what we were doing. We explained that we would like to speak with the man in charge, the person in charge. She agreed to go get him. And about 15, 20 minutes later, the head person, the head decision maker stationed at the facility in Tallahassee came out. Our goal with him was twofold. One, we wanted to deliver the coalition letter that was signed by all the members of the coalition that had the key findings and the recommendations for Neptune. And we also wanted to deliver the report that Jobs to Move America had completed after an exhaustive study of their practices, speaking with close to 100 current and former workers, where they told us their stories of working at Neptune. So the head person in charge came out. We were able to deliver the letter and the report to him directly, which for us is a huge win. So they explained that they would appreciate some time to review the report, but would be willing to meet with us and the coalition to discuss the findings at a later date, which of course is a huge positive for this process. Immediately following that, we went to City Hall of Tallahassee and had a brief press conference for local press. We had a few of our coalition members speak, and they were able to outline some of the findings to the press. stuff that they find important. And we also went over some of the recommendations for Neptune as well. So although the leadership at Neptune did agree to meet with us prior to that press conference, it seems like possibly they have begun to tell a different side of that to the press on their own. And they may have sent something different to their workers. But that doesn't change anything for us. For Jobs to Move America, our goal, and we are still focused on finding solutions to the issues outlined in that report, and that is it. We don't want to play the games. We want to find real solutions for the issues outlined in that report.
So if Neptune were to engage in good faith tomorrow, right? This say after, they've gotten this, they've looked over it. This say they give the coalition a call tomorrow or Monday. What's the first thing you'd want them to do?
So that might be the easiest answer to the question, any question here today. And it's very simple, and it's going to be the shortest one as well. That's very easy. Take us in a report seriously, sit down at the table, make a plan, put real solutions in place, including a community benefits agreement. It's as simple as that.
And can you tell us a little bit about Neptune's customers and what they are doing in California? I understand that the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is Neptune's largest customer. How do you plan on reaching out to them?
Yeah, so Neptune is a huge supplier of water meters in the United States and also Canada. And LADWP is their largest customer. They're a huge customer. And they even have the potential to become an even bigger customer for Neptune. LADWP, it's the largest public water system in the country. That's a lot of public good, a lot of water infrastructure to be built, and water meters to be bought. So we're working with partners in California to elevate our concerns to places like the LADWP Board of Commissioners. So we believe they should know about these concerns, the cost of doing business with Neptune and not just them, but on Tallahassee, Alabama as well, and to investigate for themselves the environmental issues we raise in the report. We believe that their customers should be doing that investigation as well.
So, Matt, was there anything on the horizon that you want to let listeners know about? And are there any ways that folks listening could help?
Yeah, sure. So, when it comes to the report, we are beyond confident that the report was published is fact. We don't know how long it's going to take to persuade Neptune to sit down and negotiate with us. But like we said, we do need Neptune to take this seriously and sit down with us. We know the stories that the Neptune workers have told us is their truth. We know these are real issues that affect the workers, their families, and the city of Tallahassee. And I also have to add too, this is not meant to bring Neptune down. Our goal is not to, destroy Neptune or bring it down or ruin their business. That is not our goal. Our goal is to help make it, a stronger, better place to work, where workers feel heard, where workers can go home to their families without injury and spend time with them on the weekends and at night. We want a stronger Neptune because ultimately a stronger Neptune makes a stronger Tallahassee, and a stronger Tallahassee makes a stronger Alabama. That's our main goal. We are going to continue to try to get Neptune to sit down at the table and negotiate with us. You asked if there's anything people can do. If you are interested, and Adam has said this a couple times, but if you're interested, you can find the full report at goodneighborsalabama.org. You'll also be able to see what Good Neighbors Alabama is all about. But most importantly, you will be able to see the report, all the findings, everything that we did in the study, to, help persuade Neptune to sit down and negotiate with us and let those workers tell their story. We believe that it's not just Neptune that Neptune workers that are experiencing this. This is happening all over Alabama when it comes to rural manufacturing facilities. So we believe we can change one, we can move to the next, and we can continue to make things better for all workers in Alabama.
Wow, thanks again for being here, Matt, organizer with Jobs to Move America's Southern Program. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we let you go?
No, I think I covered everything. We really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to speak on your show. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Matt. We really appreciate it, and we'll keep in touch. Keep us posted.
Awesome. Y'all have a great day. Okay.
All right. Take care. You can find more about the Good Neighbors Alabama Coalition by following their page on Facebook, or again, go to goodneighborsalabama.org, where you can find the new report on Neptune and Tallahassee. And you can go to jobstomoveamerica.org to find out more about JMA and the cool work they're doing, not just here in Alabama, but across the country. And with that, we are going to take our next break, and we'll be right back, y'all.
The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Adam Keller. My typical co-host and fellow agitator Jacob Morrison is out today, so I'm joined by my union sister Whitney. And if you have anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. We'll be taking your calls here in about 15 minutes or so. If you've got anything to add today, be happy to take those calls. And of course, you can leave us a voicemail anytime throughout the week, including right now if you have something to say. Before we get into Boss Watch, do want to just share a couple things we'll be talking about in OT today, and then I think we've got some plugs to get in. So first of all, in OT, we will finish some conversation around free speech and respond to some of the union reactions about what's going on in the entertainment industry right now. Also excited to talk a little bit about what's happening in education with Starbucks, a couple strikes that we mentioned in last week in Southern Labor, and there's also a new report that came out about the worst states for workers. And spoiler alert, Alabama didn't do well. I know that's a shocker. But we got a lot to talk about coming up in the second half of the program on Overtime. Again, that's on YouTube, Facebook, and Means TV. But before we get to all that, Whitney, what's going on that folks should have on their calendar?
Yeah, so this upcoming Thursday, September 25th, the North Alabama Area Labor Council will be attending the Huntsville City Council meeting to make sure that City Council members stand by their promise to vote no on adding AI cameras to Huntsville garbage trucks. I believe y'all talked about that on the show last week. So we will be there holding City Council and the mayor accountable. Let's see, Labor Notes always has some great trainings and events. They have a North Carolina Troublemaker School that's actually today. They have a Stewards Workshop on assertive grievance handling and democratic rights for union members. All of that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Next Saturday, you and I will both be at the Alabama Rise annual meeting, which is Saturday, September 27th in Montgomery. If you are an Alabama Rise member or considering about joining, this is a great opportunity to see what we will have going on in the next year. And we would like to encourage everyone to save the date for Saturday, November 1st in Tuscaloosa, which is not a game day, don't worry, for a Labor Notes Fight Back School. This is a great chance for people that are doing labor organizing or in the labor movement to get together to discuss what's going on with the labor movement in Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely excited about that. Lots of cool stuff going on, lots of opportunities. Labor Notes has lots of those great trainings coming up online. I wanted to highlight that one you mentioned, Democratic Rights for Union Members, October 2nd. And that's going to talk a little bit about the LMRDA and some of your union member Bill of Rights and learn some of the rules that govern unions and how you can use some of that information to actually build rank and file power in your local and in your workplace. So that's really cool. And yeah, Saturday, November 1st, save the date, you Alabama folks, or, other folks that are willing to come to Tuscaloosa. We're working with Labor Notes to do a Fight Back Summit that afternoon. And hopefully within the next week or so, we'll have all the details ironed out and we can start really inviting folks. But just want to put it on people's calendar. If you're interested, it'll be a good opportunity to bring movement folks together. So with that, let's get into Boss Watch. Boss Watch is, of course, a segment we do every week, highlighting some of the bad behavior of bosses. So we'll start in Florida. Following 2 federal safety inspections, the U.S. Department of Labor has cited a Jacksonville roofing contractor with 10 safety violations for willfully exposing workers to fall hazards by not requiring them to wear fall protection while working at least 6 feet above a lower level, leading to over $700,000 in proposed penalties. On March 18, 2025, the department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration initiated an investigation at an ELO Restoration LLC Jacksonville worksite, operating as ELO Roofing. 2 weeks later, OSHA initiated a separate investigation at an ELO roofing site in St. John's after learning a worker sustained injuries and required hospitalization after falling through a residential roof while removing skylight fixtures. The agency determined the worksite did not install guardrails, safety nets, or personal fall arrest systems, and employees were not provided with alternative fall protection measures. ELO Restoration LLC was cited with 4 willful, 3 repeat, a serious, and 2 other than serious citations, totaling $752,846 in proposed penalties. Moving over to Georgia, Action Insulation Company, a general contractor specializing in insulation installation and asbestos abatement in Port Wentworth, Georgia, agreed to pay $40,000 to settle a sexual harassment and constructive discharge lawsuit filed by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. The EEOC suit said Action Insulation's owner subjected a female office manager to sexual harassment, including by making unwanted sexual comments and jokes, showing her lewd photographs, slapping her buttocks, pulling her hair, and touching her in an unwanted manner. The agency said the office manager resisted the owner's advances and complained twice to her supervisor, but the company failed to take any action to stop the harassment. According to the suit, the office manager was left with no choice but to resign after the harassment escalated to physical assault. The company's alleged conduct violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits sexual harassment in employment. The EEOC filed suit in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Georgia, Savannah Division, after first attempting to reach a pre-litigation settlement through its conciliation process. The 3-year consent decree settling the suit requires Action Insulation to provide monetary relief to the employee, revise and redistribute its anti-harassment policies, provide anti-harassment training to its employees, and post a notice in the workplace informing employees of the settlement and of their rights against discrimination. Furthermore, the company will provide the EEOC with periodic reports regarding complaints of sexual harassment. And those weren't the only harassers out there. Moving over to Virginia, Virginia International Terminals, LLC, a marine terminal operator headquartered in Norfolk, will pay $20,000 and furnish other relief to settle a disability discrimination lawsuit filed by the U.S. EEOC. According to the suit, the employee worked at VIT-operated Norfolk International Terminals, driving a hustler truck which moves shipping containers around Norfolk International Terminals at a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. The driver was hospitalized because of a cardiac event and received an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. The EEOC alleged that after his procedure, VIT violated federal anti-discrimination law by refusing to allow him back to work as a hustler driver, even though he received a medical release, and instead offered lower-paying work. The lawsuit also charged that VIT violated the law when it assumed the employee would pose a safety risk and imposed restrictions excluding him from working in certain categories of jobs. This assumption was made without conducting an individualized analysis to determine whether or not he could perform the job without posing a direct threat to himself or others. So the conduct alleged in the EEOC's lawsuit violates the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, which prohibits employment discrimination because of a disability. The EEOC filed suit in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia after first attempting to reach a pre-litigation settlement through its voluntary conciliation process. In addition to paying monetary damages, the 3-year consent decree resolving the lawsuit requires VIT to update its policies to assure compliance with the ADA, train key personnel, post an employee notice, and submit periodic compliance reports to the EEOC. And last one here is North Carolina. Piedmont Cheerwine Bottling Company, which is a North Carolina-based soft drink company with a facility in Colfax, North Carolina, violated federal law when it required an employee to undergo a medical examination and discharged her because of a disability, according to a U.S. EEOC lawsuit. According to the lawsuit, a former Cheerwine employee took medication for her disability, which had a side effect of deterioration in her hip cartilage, resulting in a limp when she walked. While she worked as a store merchandiser for almost 6 weeks when, in March 2023, the company required her to submit to a medical examination weeks earlier than other probationary employees because of her disability. Even though the employee met the physical requirements of the position, Cheerwine placed her on unpaid leave and told her to obtain a complete medical clearance before returning. On March 20th, the employee submitted a note from her doctor clearing her back to work, but Cheerwine rejected the note and terminated her employment. Let's see. This EEOC seeks monetary damages for the employee, including compensatory and punitive damages and injunctive relief against the employer to prevent such unlawful conduct in the future. Moving on to Union Busters, this segment of Boss Watch, Union Busters, covering national updates, is sponsored by Labor Lab. Labor Lab is an employer watchdog organization. They are committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that union busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are new filings from this week. Eagle Materials Mountain Cement in Texas hired Independent Center for Worker Education for $3,750 a day. Workers there still won the union election, even though the union busters didn't file until after the election was over. Sibelco Crystal Plant in North Carolina hired East Coast Labor Relations for $3,800 a day. The union election is underway there. We mentioned HCA Fort Dalton Destin Hospital in Florida hired Edward, cannot pronounce his last name, will not try to pronounce it, but they hired Edward for $275 an hour. The workers, of course, still won their election, even though those union busters didn't file until after the election was over. Over in California, the California Community Foundation hired Labor Information Services for $325 an hour. The union election is underway there. As a reminder, due to lack of enforcement, some labor relations consultants may disregard the law and fail to report their activities to the U.S. Department of Labor. Therefore, it's crucial for organizers and workers to report suspected persuader activity to the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Labor Management Standards, the OLMS. It's crucial for organizers and workers to report suspected persuader activity to the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Labor Management Standards. You can reach them at email at olms-public@dol.gov, by calling 202-693-0123, or by contacting your nearest district office. And of course, you can always reach out to Labor Lab at contact@laborlab.us. So that's all we have for the first half of the show. A couple things to wrap us up with. Do not forget, we've got a whole second half of the program coming up. Another hour and a half online on YouTube and Facebook, and of course on Means TV now, which we're really excited about. And for those of you who are not subscribed to Means TV, want to encourage it, you can use our discount code TVLR and receive 20% off your first month or your entire year. Definitely worth it. Jacob and I attended the Means TV cooperative quarterly meeting recently. And there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the Means TV universe. Really excited about some of the content they have planned. So now is a great time to get subscribed. And if you're not on our email list at tvlr.fm, definitely do that. Sign up to stay up to date. Don't forget you can leave us a voicemail anytime throughout the week at 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. And, of course, do not forget to like and subscribe and share anything you can from the Valley Labor Report. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your donations at tvlr.fm/donate. So that's all we have for the first half of today's show. Stay tuned for overtime. Lots of good stuff coming up. You don't want to miss it. and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit here in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people, for working people in the South and all over. My name is Adam Keller. My usual co-host, Jacob Morrison, is out today. So I do appreciate my union sister, Whitney, here spending some time with me in the studio. And we appreciate you spending time with us today. If you'd like to call in, the number is 844-899-TVLR. And we already have a caller, which is great. So again, that's 844-899-TVLR 8857. You can get in where this caller is coming in. I can't see where the caller's coming from, so I'm just going to say caller. Let us know where you're calling from. What's on your mind?
Hey, I'm calling from Asheville, North Carolina right now.
Awesome. Asheville, North Carolina, it's a beautiful part of the country. So tell us what's on your mind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to announce some amazing news upcoming, not this Wednesday, but the Wednesday next, October 1st. Going to have the first meet and confer meeting for a public school district in North Carolina. North Carolina public sector workers haven't been able to have collective bargaining since 1959. And nobody really has been able to get any sort of meet and confer policy or any sort of agreement like that with public school admin. And so here in Asheville, the Asheville City Association of Educators, an NEA local and NCAE local, we're having the first meet and confer meeting with our administration on October the 1st. So it's going to be some amazing news.
That is so cool. Wow. Yeah, that is great news. I'm so glad you called and shared that with us. I don't know if you heard any of the show earlier this morning, but I was kind of talking about my story and my journey of being that person who was in meet and confer meetings with superintendents, right? So super exciting to hear that progress. There's a lot of great organizing happening kind of under the radar in North Carolina, it seems like. I know, last time I checked, North Carolina was like 49th, 48th, somewhere in that region for union density. But just in the last few years, I've really seen a lot of cool organizing happening. And this is proof of it. So, wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Will you call back after October 1st and let us know how it goes?
Oh, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, do that. And do you know if there's is there anything else you wanted to say about it? Like kind of what led to this?
So yeah, I'm a part of the Asheville City Association of Educators, and and this is kind of wide. There's much more emphasis on becoming an organizing-led local as opposed to, service model. And Asheville, within 3 years, we essentially tripled our membership. So we were around like 15 to 20% density, but we were the first local to majority in North Carolina, and we were the first local to get meet and confer. There's also Durham Association of Educators also has their meet and confer meeting coming up, but we like to flex a little bit and say that we were the first. But there's also some other counties, some other locals that are vying for it as well. So North Carolina is active and moving right now in the public school sphere, and it's just amazing to see right now because, we're so low in density, we're so low in per pupil funding. Now is the time to get active and to tell these decision makers really, really who holds the power here.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that update. Definitely keep us posted. Sending my love and solidarity to all of y'all over there in North Carolina. That's great work. Keep it up.
Again, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you can call 844-899-TVLR. Let us know what's going on. Didn't expect that update. I was not aware it had developed like that in North Carolina. That is so cool to see the public sector organizing. I think we need more of that kind of energy across the South. there's so much potential and opportunity to organize in the public school space, and it's really urgently needed. We'll talk, hopefully if we have time later in the overtime, we'll mention some of the education impacts of the budget happening right now. Lots of potential cuts facing education, lots of attacks on educator speech, just a lot happening in the education world. So now is the time to organize. Really appreciate that. And again, so 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857. Give us a call if you have anything to check in with us about. Before we dive into the rest of overtime, I did want to do a quick international update and send our solidarity to the workers of France. In France, there's been massive anti-austerity protests and labor strikes. They were held across the country on Thursday. It was a show of anger over President Emmanuel Macron's austerity policies. Organizers said 1 million people took part in the strikes and the protests. Of course, the French authorities estimated about half that at 500,000 protesters. According to France 24, teachers, train drivers, pharmacists, and hospital staff were among those who went on strike as part of the day of protest. And teenagers blocked dozens of high schools for hours. Protesters and unions called for the previous government's fiscal plans to be scrapped, for more spending on public services, higher taxes on the wealthy, and for the reversal of an unpopular change, making people work longer to get a pension. So shout out to all the French workers out there. France has a strong history of their working class organizing and fighting back. Sending our love and solidarity over there. And I do believe we have another caller on the line, 256 caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, it's Dwayne. How you doing, Adam?
Doing well.
Hey, Whitney.
Hey.
Well, you said in this segment that we could talk about the Brendan Carr goings on with Kimmel and things like that.
Yeah, what's up?
And that's what I want. Okay. Well, you're going to find this really fascinating, I think. I really don't like SB 231 that takes away the ability of the business to have a union without a vote. You know that, right?
Right, the voluntary recognition bill.
Yeah, well, guess what? What Brendan Carr, and I'm not an attorney now, but you can look this up yourself, okay? It's called jawboning. Did you know that? When the government, yes. Yeah, when the government does something like the legislature did with 231 or potentially like what Brendan Carr did with Jimmy Kimmel, that's called jawboning. And you're going to find this very fascinating. They sued against it in a case called M-U-T-H-Y versus Missouri, okay? And guess what that had to do with, Adam? That had to do with the government telling the media to give out misinformation or whatever about COVID-19. Have you got me?
Oh.
Now, that was called, yes, jawboning. Now, things got to a certain point or whatever happened, okay? And it didn't get to go forward necessarily as a case. But guess what part of it did, Adam? The lower court, that would cover, I believe, Alabama, Tennessee, and all that. It said the government could not, even though it decided differently about the COVID case, it said we still uphold the lower court saying that there cannot be coercion from the government on businesses. Have you got me? Yeah. That is still the precedent. So that means that National Labor, Board, whoever you guys have, could potentially use that. Now, let me tell you another thing that protects Kimmel, hypothetically here, with me not being an attorney, but I do know about this because this is one of my favorite historical persons to ever research. His name was William James Sidus. And in a case called Sidus versus FR Publishing, the highest court, and it's still the precedent, you can look this up. What happened was Sidus is the you know, and historically, he is the highest IQ person ever in the world. Have you got me? Now, this reporter came along and wanted to do an article about, how the average person was better than a person with a super high IQ, that Sidus had never made anything of himself. Have you got me? He pretended to befriend Sidus, and then wrote a scathing, awful article that went throughout the world. Have you got me? And Sidus, being his high IQ self, he went to Harvard at the age of 11, Adam. Have you got me? Graduated by the time he was 16. He represented himself, and they said that a reporter, in this case it would be the media, could say anything about anybody that they wanted to. I mean, you know, like he could even get it wrong, and it didn't make any difference, just so long as it was a media-worthy subject that was being said. That still holds up as the precedent of what you can do. Have you got me? And guess what it turned out? Make a great movie. It turns out that they go after he dies of like heart failure or something within a year and a half from all the pressure of everything that happened. But 20 years later, they go through his notebooks, and it is the first mathematical showing of black holes in space that he actually did before anybody else. Have you got me?
Wow.
So it turns out the reporter was wrong. But even though the reporter could be wrong, the reporter could be wrong about anything that he wanted to, and this is still the precedent, y'all, and nothing could be done. And someone attempting to do what it looks like Brandon Carr was trying to do would be called jawboning. And that would be coercion of the government, which is still held up by the ruling that I was telling you, Murphy versus Missouri. Isn't all that interesting?
That is interesting. Yeah. I've found those cases here. That's interesting. Yeah. I appreciate you turning me on to that, Dwayne.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm still thinking about running. And listen, I got some other news, too. I have two different sources. One source is a personal source that says the HBO documentary of the Alabama Solution will be out October the 10th. But when I went online and asked AI and looked at other sources, it says it will be on HBO on October the 3rd. So I just wanted, you know, anybody could look up for themselves. I really want everyone to go and see it. And remember that I've been out there doing my best for the mentally challenged that were kicked out of the hospitals, mental hospitals when they closed, couldn't, you know, fend for themselves, no date to the families of anyone when they pushed them out, that are now, many of them still in isolated cells in Alabama prisons. So, you know, and listen, Adam, if anybody's saying that someone shouldn't say anything about someone that's in a terrible predicament of a situation, you could not be in a worse situation than those people. Are you following me?
Yeah.
And when I got on conservative radio, they'd say, well, they should get a job. They were absolutely bedridden in these hospitals. Impossible to get a job. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, just a complete lack of understanding and empathy.
Yes, but here we go. When this movie comes out, if any of those persons say those same type things, they will be doing what they've accused Jimmy Kimmel of doing. You get me? Are you following me there?
Yeah.
Will,
it's a possible chilling effect on all of it.
Yes. That's what I wanted to make you and everyone aware of. What they will be doing, what they said you can't do, only to an even more terrible extent. If they say they shouldn't have stole food or they shouldn't have, you get me, they had to. There was no, they can't say that these persons could work. They can't say these persons could do anything. And it was Governor Riley who got more money for moving the workers that were in these hospitals to other areas. The federal government paid money for him to no longer have workers. Are you following me there? That's part of the reason. Plus,
about 25 years ago.
Yes, it would be around 2010. And remember, it took these persons like 3 or 4 or more years to restructure out because, again, every time they let them out, they were homeless with no mental capacity. You following me there, right?
I mean, and like we talked about with we talked with Eddie Burkhalter and the new book last week, or I guess it was last week, where we just talked about how traumatic these experiences were for people, and when they are coming out, they're worse off than when they went in.
Absolutely. Look, when you see the movie, you are just going to be. It's going to be beyond what you could have imagined in your wildest, terrible nightmares that you're going to be seeing when you see what's going on with the lack of guards and the free-for-all terribleness that's been occurring, y'all. I mean, it will put you back in a way that you never thought that it would.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Dwayne, I appreciate it.
And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate you keeping us posted and look forward to the documentary coming out later this fall. We'll find out when it comes out for sure, but appreciate it, Dwayne.
Hey, thanks a lot, y'all. Take care.
Yep, take care.
Thanks.
So he mentioned it, talking about the Jimmy Kimmel situation, and so we'll touch into that here in a minute because all the entertainment unions just about did put out statements, and so there's more we can dive in there. But I do think we have another caller on the line. So we've got a 714 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And what's on your mind?
Buenos dias, buenas tardes, Comrade Adam, and all the comrades out there that are listening to this great program that hopefully one day will be on FM airwaves because it's well needed. It's Jose Francisco Negrete, rank and file Teamster out of Local 952 out here in Anaheim, California. Also part of Teamster Mobilized, also part of Labor for Palestine. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. Teamster Mobilized was having a general meeting, and we're going to discuss the state of the 2023 UPS contract. The link is bit.ly/TM-020. So if any Teamsters, UPS Teamsters out there want to discuss the state of the 2023 UPS contract, please hop on our call tomorrow. I think the call is around 10 in the Pacific and 1 p.m. in the Eastern. We could discuss this contract and how it's shaping out for us out here in UPS land. And I also want to say that I'm also part of the Home Depot Boycott Coalition. Teamster Mobilized and Labor for Palestine are part of it. And just reminding the general public out there to boycott Home Depot, because out here in the West, they're very complicit in these kidnappings. I don't know how complicit they are in Chicago, New York, and other places where these kidnappings are taking place. But out here in the West, they're very complicit. They let these homelanders, aka the Border Patrol, ICE, DHS, HIS, they just let them, run around their stores trying to get anybody they deem that's, so-called a criminal. I don't know if a day laborer is a criminal. They're trying to look for an honest day work, but that's what this fascist government led by baby Joseph Goebbels, aka Stephen Miller, proclaims these hardworking people to be. So please, let's boycott Home Depot. Go to a regular mom and pop brick and mortar store. So let's support them. Okay, we shouldn't support Home Depot because of what's happening. And I want to send my solidarities to the comrades out there in Chicago. They're experiencing what we're experiencing out here, which is, a military pseudo occupation, which it's daunting. It's daunting, but I draw inspiration from the comrades in Palestine and the West Bank, and Gaza that have been resisting occupation for decades, and right here we're still not at that level where we're fighting. But we're fighting, but sometimes some of us get drained out because it just comes in waves, and sometimes it's too much, but that's why we have to organize and be part of an organization or be part of a coalition and look for others for to stretch that arm out and say, I got you, brother, I got you, sister, because these times we're facing, if you go in there alone, it just wipes you out. It just wipes you out. So, I want to send, my solidarity to the Chicago folks and everybody, and it's especially to labor. This is a show dedicated to labor. Labor, and I don't know how many times I've said this before, but we have to wake up. What's happening to undocumented workers now in the entertainment industry, it's going to come for us. And labor shouldn't not bow down to no president. I don't care. We should not be bowing down to any president, because that happens, then we just become a company union, or whatever you want to call it. That's a little bit more higher up of a company union, because that's what we're getting right now. I'm just seeing the unions, the major ones, internationals, just being quiet of what's happening. I'm glad that local 399, the Hollywood Teamster Division, issued a statement regarding Jimmy Kimmel. But we need to do more. We need to do more. 44 years ago, yesterday, September 19th, 1981, there was a solidarity strike. Next year will be the 45th anniversary. I cannot see a better way for labor to act than to have a solidarity strike, to shut this shit down, to say, you know what, we're done with this fascist tactics that this government is using. Kidnapping day laborers, kidnapping car washers, kidnapping people that are just trying to sell fruit or flowers, or just pulling somebody over because they don't look American. It's those. We need to act. We need to act and protect our freedom of speech. Because if they could come for Jimmy Kimmel and for Stephen Colbert, but use the disguise of a corporation, to silence those kind of voices, what do you think they're going to try to do to labor? It's time for us to act. And thank you again for having me express my views. Solidarity to all the comrades. Free Palestine. Boycott Home Depot and labor. It's time for all of us to get active and to participate in our unions and participate out here, especially in the streets. If you have money, donate it to causes out there that are trying to do good to the community, trying to protect undocumented workers from these kidnappings out here. And I'll take any comments off the air. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Appreciate you calling in. Yeah, appreciate you calling in, Jose, and reporting out from California. A lot to unpack there, and I just appreciate the solidarity. I know there's you mentioned the boycott Home Depot efforts. There's also efforts to boycott Target. Saw where AFT has endorsed that recently, and CWA has also launched a boycott of T-Mobile. So the boycotts are coming back in style, for sure. And, it makes sense, right? Because what we have to think about the ways we have influence, and that is one way we have influence is, the money that we spend. And, it starts as little things like trying to shop with union shops, right? And making that a practice that, if your organization's going to buy stuff, you're going to buy it from a union shop and have the union label on it. But it also, can look like organizing to not shop at the places we know are being harmful to our communities. So, appreciate that call, Jose. And I think we've got another caller on the line. I think it's a 219 number. Tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and what's on your mind.
Hey, this is Adam S. from Northwest Indiana, and I'm calling today. First of all, you guys do a great show, and I really appreciate the work that you do. And thank you, Whitney, for filling in today. Always appreciate to see new people. Northwest Indiana, DSA member here, and our mutual aid project. Can I plug our mutual aid project?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. our mutual aid project running through November is to just called to Destroy the Debt. We've partnered with Undo Medical Debt, and we're fundraising to purchase medical debt from 4 Indiana counties and cancel it. And we set the lofty goal of $1.5 million, which only costs $15,000, on this end. And the idea is just to, coming up here before Christmas. And like I said, we run till November 30th. And to try to, send people a little Christmas gift, hey, we purchased your medical debt and forgave it, basically. So,
wow.
That is really cool. Yeah. Have y'all come up with any cool fundraising events so far yet, or is that kind of still in the works on different ways?
Yeah, we met last week and we schemed some things up, and then they kind of didn't work out as well as we were hoping. But we have a website. It's just destroythedebt.net. That'll take you if you want to donate. We're partnered with the people that host this that have already kind of cut the ground for us is Undo Medical Debt. You can their website's undumedicaldebt.org. And we were looking to do a concert and a movie night and some shirts. And it's always harder than you think it will be. But
it always is harder than you think it would be. That's 100% true.
Oddly enough, this is our Jacob from our chapter is the one who put this together. So shout out to him.
Wow. So there's Indiana, Jacob and Adam causing good trouble out there. That's really cool. I love to hear that. Love to hear it. We're replicating. We are multiplying. We're growing across the country.
Yeah. So anyways, again, thanks so much for the work you do. As to your last caller, and this is going to be my personal opinion, the boycotts and the divestment and the looking for companies that companies don't hold workers' needs in very high esteem. But we need to make our collective voices heard. And perhaps the only way these places will listen is through their wallet. But anyways, Undo Medical Debt. undumedicaldebt.org and destroythedebt.net.
Awesome.
Anybody who wants to throw $10, that'd be great. So.
Well, thanks, Adam. Really appreciate the call.
All right. Lessons best.
Take care. Lots of calls today. You can get where they've been at 844-899-TVLR if you've got anything to add. Let's talk a little bit about some of the union responses to the Jimmy Kimmel situation. We talked in the main show a little bit about kind of some of the facts that have occurred and what's been going on there. Did want to share a couple of the union responses. So we'll start with the Writers Guild. WGA did put out a statement. We'll quote a little bit from this. They said, "The right to speak our minds and to disagree with each other, to disturb even, is at the very heart of what it means to be a free people. It is not to be denied, not by violence, not by the abuse of governmental power, nor by acts of corporate cowardice. As a guild, we stand united in opposition to anyone who uses their power and influence to silence the voices of writers or anyone who speaks in dissent. If free speech applied only to ideas we like, we needn't have bothered to write it into the Constitution. What we have signed on to, painful as it may be at times, is the freeing agreement to disagree. Shame on those in government who forget this founding truth. As for our employers, our words have made you rich. Silencing us impoverishes the whole world. The WGA stands with Jimmy Kimmel and his writers." And of course, it wasn't just the WGA. Like I mentioned, my other union, I'm a member of two unions, CWA and IATSE, and IATSE put out a joint statement with quite a few other Hollywood unions, the Directors Guild of America, DGA, the American Federation of Musicians, AFM, and the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA. And they said, "The indefinite removal of Jimmy Kimmel Live under government pressure is not an isolated incident. It is part of a disturbing trend of increasing interference in creative expression. This kind of political pressure on broadcasters and artists chills free speech and threatens the livelihoods of thousands of working Americans. When a private citizen, business, or television network bows to government intimidation, it strikes at the heart of our First Amendment rights. Creative artists must be free to do their work without fear that their careers or their families' livelihoods will be disrupted simply for their opinions. These cases pull the rug out from under the hardworking American workers behind the scenes who make these productions possible. At a time when America's film and television industry is still struggling due to globalization and industry contraction, further unnecessary job losses only make a bad situation worse. Finally, media companies have a responsibility to defend their workers and the integrity of the stories they tell. All broadcasters must stand firm in defense of free expression and the First Amendment, not capitulate to a policy of political appeasement. So that, again, was IOTC, DGA, AFM, SAG-AFTRA, quoted from the WGA statement earlier. So, lots of Hollywood unions are speaking out. And, of course, it goes well beyond Hollywood because we're seeing a lot of cases throughout the country, particularly in the education sector. A few cases that crossed my radar this week. Texas State fired a professor who, my understanding, was at a socialist or communist conference of some kind. Apparently an infiltrator, attended the conference to record people and do what they did, which is try to get them in trouble. And so Texas State fired a professor. There's also been, but that wasn't the only one in Texas. There's been stuff going on at Texas A&M University as well. There were firings of faculty members out there, and I believe the president of the university has even been pushed out at this point. Don't know all the details there, but it's pretty concerning. And I do know that here in Alabama, the state superintendent over K-12 education has, put out a letter to superintendents across the state and is, the headlines say threatens teachers over social media posts. Auburn University has fired employees over, quote, hurtful, insensitive comments, says the president of the university. So, it's in Auburn, it's in K-12, it's in Texas. There's a lot of folks getting in trouble for their comments these days. AFT did put out a statement about the targeting of educators, and so I'll just read here from AFT President Randy Weingarten, who released the following statement. Quote, acts of violence and hate must be condemned always. They are antithetical to democracy and the values we try to instill as teachers. Last week, anyone with a social media feed, including children, witnessed a devastating tragedy, a horrific act of political violence that has traumatized the nation. Since then, teachers and many others we represent across the country have tried to deal with the effects of that trauma as it is playing out in classrooms, campuses, caregiving sites, and other settings. Utah Governor Spencer Cox and former presidents rightly recognize this moment as an inflection point, a time not just to denounce the Kirk killing as the political violence that it was, but to find a way to come together and to de-escalate. The current administration, unfortunately, has not, and some are weaponizing this moment. Of course, no one should celebrate another person's murder, but using this tragedy to encourage the doxing, censorship, and firing of people for their opinions, including educators' private opinions shared during their personal time, is wrong. Conservatives, too, are warning against going down this dangerous road. They know this sends the absolute wrong message to chill speech, one of the most important freedoms in our country. Americans must be able to exercise their First Amendment rights in their personal lives, regardless of whether we agree or disagree with them. None of us who values freedom should ever want to relinquish that right. We once again are calling for an end to the hate and the smears. We must find ways to tone down the rhetoric and disagree civilly. As the framers envisioned, education is the path to civil debate and open inquiry, and teachers promote these founding principles of our nation every day in their classrooms. Let's recognize the hard work they do, particularly in the wake of this tragedy and so many others we faced as a nation, to assuage students' trauma and create safe and welcoming environments where every student can succeed. Let's denounce political violence, find that exit ramp, find ways to de-escalate, and let's do it without eroding constitutional rights. So again, that was AFT President Randy Weingarten speaking a little bit about some of the targeting there, but AAUP has come out in defense of those fired Texas faculty, calling for their reinstatement. They speak to it as an academic freedom issue and a freedom of speech issue. So yeah, kind of scary times out there for folks who have opinions, for folks who like to speak their mind. It is kind of a dark time, it seems. And again, I recognize that sometimes we say things that are not helpful, that maybe we shouldn't say. But whether that warrants government attention or, employer discipline, I think is another conversation. So for those who are in education, I think it is an important reminder to be a union member, because who's going to have your back, right? If someone doesn't like what you've posted or doesn't like what you've said or taught, you need the power and protection of a union. And hopefully you have a real union that you can join. But even if you don't, join the best that you got. Join what you have, join what you can work with, because it is important to have that protection, because, I would much rather have someone fighting with me and having my back in those situations than be by myself. And so, I would encourage educators who listen to make sure you are a member of whatever organization you can be a member of. There's the National Education Association, there's the American Federation of Teachers. If you're in higher ed, there's plenty more options, like down here in the South, there's United Campus Workers. So there's options out there. I would encourage you to get involved. And even if it's not, as good as it should be, you can make it better. And I think that's, really, really important to do that. Wanted to segue there. While we're talking about education, mention a couple other things that are happening in the education world that I wanted to mention. Teachers, funding, and higher ed are all under pressure right now. A lot of education workers are saying that the resources are shrinking even as the demands continue to rise. We've got a new survey out from AFT that shows teachers are spending hundreds of dollars out of pocket on food for kids and classroom supplies. At the same time, we've got federal funding that's at risk, that could be really harmful to schools here in Alabama and beyond. And there's also a new campaign happening in the higher ed faculty professor space where folks are organizing to try to really protect public education and research. Kicking off this update with that survey I mentioned from AFT, a national survey of AFT K-12 members reveals nearly half expect they'll need to buy food for students this year because of federal nutrition funding that's expiring and about to be further reduced. Most teachers continue to spend out of pocket on classroom supplies, more than $300 per year, many spending even more, $600 and beyond. It covers basic supplies and snacks, cleaning supplies, sometimes even climate control. It is kind of unusual for a lot of jobs that you would be expected to spend out-of-pocket money on your supplies to do your job. But that is something that a lot of teachers deal with. And, as we're looking at cuts to nutrition programs with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and some of the impact on SNAP and, school nutrition programs could potentially be impacted. That's going to shift a burden on the teachers, right? Because no teacher wants their students to go hungry. And if they can help them, they're going to try to help them. And a lot of times that comes out of pocket. And, it's disproportionately the low-income students, right? The poorer areas, whether it's in the inner city or rural areas, low-income kids, those are the ones that are struggling the most and often are dealing with food insecurity. And so it's the teachers and the employees at those schools that are often coming out of the pocket the most. And, there are long-term consequences to that on morale and attrition and just the burden it puts on educators above and beyond just doing their job. AFT's president said every year public school educators dig into their own pockets to help their students get the education they deserve. They pay for books, decorations, paper, pencils, and yes, even food because they care deeply about their students and giving them a shot at success. One Florida teacher in the survey said, quote, "A lot of my students are starving because of lack of food availability." And as a former educator, I can really attest that kids who are hungry are not kids who are ready to learn. Kids who are hungry are not kids who are ready to, quote unquote, behave in a classroom and do what you want them to do. And so really a deep issue that a lot of educators are dealing with. And it comes at a time that's, pretty troubling because the president has submitted his draft budget and it is working its way through Congress right now. And according to what I've seen, the budget is proposed by the president, and it's changing between the Senate version and the House version. But at least what we know was originally proposed, there were some significant cuts to Title I, which is for disadvantaged student funding, cuts to student aid, efforts to reduce drug costs, cuts to supports for, red and blue states alike. And we know that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was very much about, favoring tax breaks for the wealthy while gutting needed services. And so it's, I guess, not a surprise that we're looking at potential education cuts, but in what I've learned in terms of what it will do to Alabama students, it's a lot of programs impacting, students like English language learners, for example. And I'm sure there's no coincidence there, right? That those are some of the kids that are going to be, disproportionately harmed by this. So there's a lot of potential cuts on the horizon. Like I said, the House and the Senate are, debating different versions of the budget. There's, potential government shutdown even looming with all this. So it's hard to say what's going to happen, but, it is important that educators be engaged on this and know the impact. In a lot of areas, federal money is not the biggest pot of money for education. It's typically state and local funds. But, most of our schools are not in great shape to where they can afford to take any kind of cuts at this stage, especially cuts to programs that disproportionately serve those who are disadvantaged, whether they're low income or special education or anything like that. So, definitely something to keep your eye on. And the last bit in the education sector I wanted to share is that there is a new nationwide campaign called Higher Education, Saving Lives, Building Futures, Powering the Economy. And it is a partnership between AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, and AAUP, the American Association of University Professors. And so they launched this campaign this fall to defend higher education from funding cuts, political interference, and threats to academic freedom. And they had a press conference. They've got TV, digital ad buys, lobbying on Capitol Hill, trying to mobilize 400,000 higher ed members, and getting involved in the midterms to support candidates who will support funding for science, grants, student aid, all the kinds of things that higher ed workers need to be successful in their jobs and with their students. So that's interesting. We'll see. Maybe we can get someone on the show to talk to us a little bit about it. But there's definitely a connection between higher education and public goods, whether it's medical research or scientific innovation or just, giving more folks opportunities. And as we've spoken about, there's threats coming from political interference and budget cuts and changing grant formulas. So, this kind of mobilizing and organizing of higher ed faculty and students and staff could really build some pressure at a time when it's needed. And I did want to share this from AAUP. Quote, the Trump administration's attacks on higher education follow a well-worn authoritarian playbook. Like the courts and the press, public education is often targeted by those seeking to erode the foundations of a free society. So now is definitely the time to organize. If you work in higher ed, it's very important to start building collective organization, collective power, taking collective action, because an injury to one is an injury to all. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it very well could. It could be your coworkers next. It could be your department that gets cut. It's something that all folks have to be engaged on, and all of us are going to be impacted by these education cuts for a long time, right? Because when you cut services to students, that has a long-term impact on their learning, their ability to thrive as an adult, or postgraduate life, and that has a ripple effect on our entire community. So it's going to be really important, as educators are being squeezed, as these supports are being cut, that unions are mobilizing, that our workers are getting involved in the unions, because it's not just about the budget. It's really about the kind of society that we have and that we want, and hopefully it's one where public education and research and students can be honored and not sacrificed at the altar of profit. And so stay tuned to these debates about the budget. We'll be covering it in the coming weeks and how it impacts other unions, other sectors of the economy. Just see where you can apply some pressure yourself. And I wanted to switch gears here for a second. And we did mention collective action. So on that note, obviously one of the most important tools of collective action that we as workers have is the ability to go on strike. And we've been covering a couple of strikes recently, somewhat in the South, as well as a little bit outside of the South. And we'll start with the UAW. UAW members at GE Aerospace have approved a new contract. About 640 UAW Local 647 members at GE Aerospace voted 82% in favor of ratifying a new 5-year contract that includes money to offset increases in health care, strong job security, and more time off. So up there in the Cincinnati area, after about an intense 3 weeks on strike, the picket lines have finally been winding down. And like I said, they voted 82% to approve the new 5-year contract just this week. The UAW Local 647 president, Brian Strunk, said, quote, together we stood like David against Goliath, shoulder to shoulder against a billion-dollar company, refusing to be treated as just numbers. We secured job security, more time with our families, and money to offset healthcare costs. So the deal does deliver some significant gains, according to the UAW, including minimum workforce guarantees to protect jobs, payments to offset healthcare cost increases, and adding personal and vacation time. I'd like to congratulate the 600-plus UAW Local 647 members at GE Aerospace for standing up and using your collective strength, said the UAW's Region 2B Director, Dave Green. For over 3 weeks across Erlanger and Evandale, you never wavered. Your grit, resilience, and of course your solidarity showed a multi-billion-dollar company what power really looks like. The newly ratified agreement is effective September 15th and expires September 15th, 2030. And the other major strike we've been talking about on the show is in St. Louis area. That would be with Boeing. And so there are a couple of updates with Boeing. Let's see here. Let me get my notes. Yeah, there's over 3,200 machinists with IAM District 837 that have been on strike since August 4th at the Boeing's defense plants in the St. Louis area, including facilities in Berkeley, St. Charles, and Muscoda, Illinois. Sorry if I mispronounced it, my Illinois comrades out there. Workers are pushing for fair wages, stronger retirement benefits, and a contract that guarantees raises without conditions they can't control. This past week, the union made a bold move. The District 837 members overwhelmingly ratified their own 4-year contract proposal and are now calling on Boeing to accept it as a pre-ratified agreement to end the strike. Their plan includes larger top-scale raises, a $10,000 signing bonus, and improved 401k contributions in line with what Boeing offers elsewhere. Boeing, however, has rejected the union's proposal. Last I saw, Dan Gillian, Boeing's vice president of air dominance, accused the union of creating false expectations by voting on an offer we never made, including terms we've expressly told them we won't accept. So, we'll see what happens there. Workers are saying that Boeing's promises don't add up. According to one union member who told St. Louis Public Radio, quote, "The company acts like, oh, these raises are guaranteed. They're not. They are conditional upon certain things being met that are outside of your control." So the strike has drawn strong solidarity. Local unions and Missouri Jobs with Justice rallied alongside the machinists last week, while members of the Congressional Labor Caucus have publicly urged Boeing to return to the table and bargain in good faith. For now, the ball is in Boeing's court. If the company accepts the union's pre-ratified proposal, the strike could end immediately. If not, thousands of workers are prepared to stay on the line until they win a fair contract. So we will keep you posted. Congratulations to those UAW members at GE Aerospace for a successful conclusion to their strike. Sending solidarity to the machinists with IAM as they are working to finally get a fair contract out of Boeing over in the St. Louis area. And, talking of strikes, there is a potential strike looming this fall. And I'm talking about Starbucks. So, Whitney, I know you've been following the Starbucks union drive a little bit. I know the president of Starbucks Workers United put out an article just recently within these times, and Dave Jamieson, a great labor reporter with the Huffington Post, had a write-up as well. So, fill us in. What's some of the takeaways of what's going on with Starbucks?
Yeah, so Starbucks and their baristas union, Starbucks Workers United, have stalled after 4 years of negotiating without reaching a contract. And so to push Starbucks to resolve this, help them really reach a collective bargaining agreement, more than 40 groups, including AFL-CIO, Greenpeace, DSA, and more, signed a letter to the CEO of Starbucks, Brian Niccol, asking him to come to the table in good faith and help them reach a contract. And so in the 4 years that Starbucks, or a few years that Starbucks has been organizing, they have more than 640 stores unionized across the country, and that includes several in Alabama. I know there's Scottsboro, Birmingham, and Huntsville. And they've been working on a contract for 4 years now. In 2023, Starbucks said they intended to reach a contract by the end of 2024. So we are well over halfway into 2025, and that still hasn't happened. They did get a new CEO in that time, who is trying to revitalize the company. So some of that could be related to that. And right now they have 3 main demands, which is more hours to improve staffing issues. This is from the union, higher take-home pay, and to resolve a litany of unfair labor practice charges. Lynn Fox, the president of Workers United, wrote a really excellent piece in these times, just talking about what is going on with this campaign. And there was a quote I saw. Okay, Workers United members, and particularly the barista bargaining delegates, have approached the path forward in a spirit of collaboration and confidentiality. However, Starbucks has broken with that commitment over the last several months by giving false statements about bargaining to the press, misleading the public on the state of contract negotiations, and resuming union busting in stores. Now we must tell investors, customers, and the public what has been happening so that we are not misunderstood. So I think there's a lot to watch there to see if that will go towards a strike. They did strike. Starbucks did strike in December of last year at the start of the holiday season. So this is not unprecedented. So we shall see.
Yeah. Appreciate that update. It's an exciting campaign in a lot of ways because it's been very grassroots. It's very much been a worker-to-worker, member-to-member kind of organizing. But, something that dawns on me, of course, and I've talked with other folks about this as well, is that it's also an incredibly difficult kind of campaign, right? To go store by store by store when there are so many stores. Even with the tremendous success they've had so far, there's still so many stores left to organize, so many workers who do not yet have a union. And so it is a monumental struggle, but it's really impressive what they've built so far. They've had a lot of wins, including here in the South. You mentioned some of the ones here in Alabama, and virtually every week, and last week in Southern Labor, there's a new win by Starbucks Workers United somewhere in the South. And so I think that is really important. Something else that I've encountered is that, a lot of the workers at Starbucks are a little different than some of the union members that folks may be used to. And, they tend to be younger, more diverse. They're coming from a service industry background, right, which has not seen a lot of unions in recent generations. It used to be more common in earlier eras, but it's pretty uncommon to, sell coffee or to serve food and have a union contract in today's age. And so it has been a breakthrough in a really tough sector to organize. But yeah, it's going to really be important that they can secure a contract. It's going to take a lot of pressure on the company. I think it's an opportunity for all of organized labor to get behind these baristas and these workers and really send our support and solidarity. And so we'll see, if it does lead to any kind of strike activity this fall. Certainly if it does, we support them however we can, here in Alabama and beyond. So it's interesting to see what's happening with this campaign. Obviously, it's an uphill battle. It's a very powerful company, and I'm still really inspired by the Scottsboro win because Scottsboro is a pretty rural Alabama town, very low union density, even for Alabama standards. And these workers were able to win a union in Scottsboro, and the youngest person on the organizing committee was 16 years old at the time, which is truly remarkable to be a high school age student fighting against one of the most powerful companies in the world, in the country at least, and a company that will send high-priced union busters and HR folks and lawyers to try to intimidate workers. It's really, that's an astounding win. It's something we can celebrate, and it proves what's possible. So, I know for me, I don't shop at Starbucks unless it is a union Starbucks. Like, that's really the only time I'm ever interested. I think that's something we can think about strategically as a movement is, we've talked about boycotts throughout the show today. That's something else I think folks can engage with and look at how can we bring pressure to bear on Starbucks to actually give these workers a fair contract. It's going to take a lot of pressure, not just from the baristas and Starbucks Workers United, but from the community and from all of the labor movement. Let's see. And let's see what we got coming up next here. What I want to talk about next. Let's get my notes going. So we've got a good update on Starbucks. Let's stick with some good news. Mostly good news, I would say. I want to highlight the nurses union because the members of National Nurses United, which is the largest union of registered nurses in the country, they have been in the headlines a lot lately. We've talked about them on the show a good bit frequently because they've been busy. They've had a lot of good stuff happening. And their stories give us a window into some of the biggest battles happening in healthcare, in the workplace, and in our democracy. So starting with some good news, as I mentioned earlier in the show, down in Florida, nurses at HCA Fort Walton-Destin Hospital voted to unionize with the National Nurses Organizing Committee, NNU. They say they've been dealing with chronic understaffing and unsafe conditions, and this vote was their way of demanding a seat at the table. At HCA Fort Walton-Destin, nurses have spoken loud and clear. We are ready to stand united for our patients and for each other, according to the union. And that's a really major win in the South, where hospital chains like HCA dominate and workers face huge anti-union pressure. And they have racked up some wins here in the South. We've seen it in Texas, in North Carolina, in New Orleans. So hopefully we'll see it spreading to Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama. Would love to see NNU continue this growth and continue this streak of success in the South. But of course, it's about more than just one hospital. Nurses are speaking out about the broader forces that put profits ahead of patient care. At Ascension Health, one of the largest Catholic hospital systems in the country, NNU is sounding the alarm about billions of dollars invested in fossil fuels, private equity, and luxury real estate. As the union put it, Ascension claims to follow Catholic values, but their investments in fossil fuels and luxury real estate show they are more interested in profits than in people's health. Nurses at Ascension facilities have protested, calling out what they call, quote, unfaithful investments that betray both their patients and the church's own teachings. And it doesn't stop there. At the national level, nurses are demanding accountability from the federal government. They rallied across the country after a federal watchdog confirmed what frontline caregivers already knew. VA hospitals are dangerously understaffed. Congress has been slashing collective bargaining rights and flirting with privatization. As Irma Westmoreland, a registered nurse and VA nurse leader, put it, quote, we know the billionaires who run healthcare corporations are salivating at the opportunity to funnel taxpayer money away from the VA and into private sector care. Nurses are calling for Congress to restore staffing levels and to recommit to fully funded public care for veterans. And beyond healthcare, NNU has also been raising the alarm about democracy itself. They've spoken out against new Department of Labor rules that weaken workers' rights to organize, against voter suppression schemes in Missouri, and against the spread of health misinformation at the highest levels of government. To the nurses, these aren't separate fights, they're connected. The ability of nurses to advocate for safe staffing, for public health, for their patients, is tied directly to whether workers have strong unions, whether communities have a real say at the ballot box, and whether our public institutions are led by people who actually respect science and democracy. So, if there's one takeaway from all these stories, it's this. Nurses aren't just caregivers at the bedside. They are frontline fighters for justice in our workplaces, our hospitals, and our democracy. Whether it's winning a union election in Florida, exposing corporate greed at a Catholic hospital chain, or defending the VA from privatization, nurses are showing what it looks like to try to put people over profits. And that's why the fight for union power in healthcare and across our economy matters for all of us. So really appreciate all the good work that NNU is doing here recently. It's been exciting to see. Again, would love to see it spread. Appreciate all their advocacy as well. It's always great to see that. So I think next we're going to talk a little bit. I mentioned this earlier. There was a report about the worst state for workers. And I guess I should correct it. Really, the report is about the best states to work in the U.S. in 2025. But as a Southerner, I couldn't help but notice that all of us down here in the South are in the worst places to work. When I looked, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana, we're bringing up the rear. That's for sure. And I'm going to look here. This is an Oxfam America report. Again, the best states to work in the U.S. 2025. And you can go on there and you can see your state, where it ranks, and you can find the scorecard. And I've pulled up the Alabama scorecard here. So as the federal government drags its feet on making real improvements for workers, some states are taking steps to protect workers and working families. How does your state rank? Well, Whitney, do you have any guesses on what we rank?
Let's see. Is it 47?
That's really generous of you.
I was being optimistic, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were being optimistic. Overall, number 50. Yeah, not good. We ranked number 50 out of 52. So that's our overall ranking in Alabama. Our wage policies were ranked number 48. Our worker protections were ranked number 50. And looky here, rights to organize, number 42. We almost got out of the 40s on something. So to zoom in a little bit more, wage policies. And, here's some of the things they looked at in this report card. They looked at wage policies. What's your state hourly minimum wage? Well, Alabama doesn't have a minimum wage law. So it's whatever the federal one is, which is $7.25, which hadn't changed since I was like 19 years old. And I'm 36. So what's the minimum wage versus the cost of living for a family of four? The state tipped minimum wage, which here in Alabama, again, it's the federal one, so it's $2.13. Average unemployment benefits versus wages needed to cover the cost of living. Doesn't look good there. Unemployment benefits in Alabama, very low. Can localities set the minimum wage above the state standard? Can't do that in Alabama. No, we tried.
We've been preempted.
We have been preempted. We have tried that. Birmingham tried to raise the minimum wage years ago. We had raise the wage campaigns happening in all the major cities, gaining some steam. The legislature swooped in and said, nope. Even though we claim to love small government, we don't love that kind of small government. And so localities in Alabama cannot set the minimum wage above the state standard, which we also do not have a state standard. And does your minimum wage cover farm workers? Well, hell no, of course it doesn't in Alabama. So it doesn't look great in terms of wage policies. Let's look at worker protections. Maybe it's a little better there. Does not provide paid pumping breaks for breastfeeding workers. Does not prohibit pay secrecy practices in the workplace. Does not provide some form of paid family leave. Does not provide some form of paid sick leave. Does not provide flexible scheduling of worker shifts. Does not mandate pay reporting or call-in pay by employers. Does not provide split shift pay regulation. Does not provide workers advance notice of shift scheduling. Does not provide some form of sexual harassment protection in state law. Does not extend workers' compensation mandates to farm workers. Does not extend worker protections to domestic workers. Does not provide a heat safety standard for outdoor workers. Does not provide protections for warehouse workers. Does not really maintain child labor protections. And those were some of the areas where we fell short in Alabama. Not too great. Maybe it's better in rights to organize. Oh, wait, no, it's not really all that much better. I will say the one bright spot that we have is that we did get a partially meets criteria regarding public workers, because we do have meet and confer for K-12 employees. North Carolina called in earlier. The brother from Asheville talked about them finally getting meet and confer. we do have that in state law here in Alabama. It varies widely in how effective it is and how it's implemented. But otherwise, we did poorly on the right to organize policies, because we do have right to work not only in law, but in our Constitution here in Alabama, which we know suppresses unions and membership. The state of Alabama, of course, does not provide collective bargaining or wage negotiations to teachers or other public sector employees, does not fully legalize project labor agreements to ensure a fair wage to workers on contract. And we have very minimal protections against wage theft retaliation. So Alabama and Mississippi rank closely in the labor index. Virginia leads the Southeast region through worker protections and compensation. It does have a minimum wage of $12.41 an hour, which is 28% of what it takes a family of four to cover basic cost in the state. In Alabama, the minimum wage, like I said, is $7.25, which is only 18.8% of the cost of living for a working family. So, again, Mississippi, Alabama, North Carolina, you weren't doing so hot either.
I think North Carolina was technically the worst.
Wow. So, good thing they're organizing in North Carolina, because things got to get better. Definitely need to be better. So, again, you can go to oxfamamerica.org and you can find that. Really interesting. What I would like to dive into next are the states that did well, and kind of get some ideas and inspiration for where it's going a little better than Alabama in terms of worker rights, worker protections, worker benefits, rights to organize, protections to organize. And so, we had a question in the chat about meet and confer. What is that? Good question. So meet and confer is not to the level of collective bargaining, right? But it is a formal requirement that the employer meet and confer with the employee's representative. In Alabama, the way it's worded, I don't remember the exact language, but it's something to the effect of like the majority professional organization of employees. And so in that case, the school superintendent would have to meet and confer with the local education association representative on any new school board policy. And it's what it sounds like, meet and confer. It doesn't mean they have to negotiate. And in some cases, the superintendent may say, I'm going to send you a letter of my proposed policy, and you can send me a letter of your comments and feedback, and I'll maybe listen and maybe I won't. And in some cases, it is literally a meeting, where you are meeting and discussing the proposed policy changes. It can be interpreted broadly to apply to like a whole lot of things, or it could be interpreted very strictly to only apply to like a formal change to the school board's policy manual. Really varies by location, by superintendent, that kind of thing. But it is pretty low standard. Literally, they just have to meet with you and tell you what they're doing. Whether they listen to you is another question. Whether they negotiate with you is definitely another question. So it is a form of recognition in a way, right? Because when I was the local representative of Huntsville educators, I could say, well, the Code of Alabama 16-1-30 says I am a legally authorized representative, and you have to at least meet and confer with me about X, Y, and Z. And if we caught them not doing that, then that gave us grounds to fight them. Of course, there's no real enforcement mechanism to the law, so even if you did sue them, it's, what you going to win. But it gave us some ammunition. It gave us some organizing opportunities. It's better than nothing. So yeah, it's an uphill battle if like you're just now getting that. But I know it took a lot of hard work in North Carolina to get to that point, because they do not even want to give that, right? Because it is a form of recognition. It is a form where they actually do have to communicate with you as a representative of employees, and they don't want to acknowledge your existence. That's the standard operating procedure, is pretend they don't exist, ignore. That's the kind of treatment that I think United Campus Workers gets a lot here in Alabama and a lot of campuses. The administrations prefer to pretend like they don't exist, don't ever want to acknowledge them in an official communications, things like that. So that's a little bit of unpacking of Meet and Confer and some of the information from the Oxfam America Best States to Work in 2025 report. As someone in the chat pointed out, allows firing for anything, everything, and nothing. Yes, that's at-will employment. That is the default for non-union workers in Alabama and in most places, really. And so that is why, one of the many reasons why we advocate for unions so strongly and, so consistently, because, damn it, it's just better to have due process. Right? Like, here we are talking about all these people getting fired. At least better to have due process than none. Right? And if you're an at-will employee, you can just be walked out of the building for no good reason. They literally don't have to have a good reason. It could be no reason at all. They are not legally allowed to fire you for something that is discriminatory in nature. Right? They cannot fire you explicitly for protected characteristics like race or disability. But, if you don't have a union contract and you're an at-will employee, good luck proving that to a bunch of conservative judges in Alabama or in your jurisdiction. Unless they call you an ethnic slur in writing, you're going to have an uphill battle winning that case. We talked to you about some of the cases that the EEOC, puts out in press releases. Those are just the ones that get all the way to that point. How many cases are out there that never make it to court, right? Or in some cases, never even make it to a complaint because people just deal with it. People just put up with it because they don't think they can win, and maybe they can't if they're on their own, if they're isolated. So that's why that collective organization is so important. That's why a lot of folks I know who've gotten involved in unions over the years, it was around discrimination and harassment and issues like that got people motivated as much as anything. So we're going to round things out today. I opened the show kind of on a personal note, and we're going to round things out today talking not so much personal, but about the project itself, about the Valley Labor Report. So, Whitney, you had some questions for me, right?
Yeah. So you, like you said, you opened the show today talking a little bit about your personal story, and you mentioned Jacob and David's story bringing you on to the Valley Labor Report. And, that's been a few years now. So what do you see as coming up next? What do you consider the potential of the Valley Labor Report?
Yeah, I've been wondering that a lot. Where can we take this thing? Right now we're on 5 radio stations across 3 states. We're on the YouTube, Facebook, podcast, platforms. We are now on Means TV, which we're really proud to be a part of that as well. I think, the obvious answer to that is more radio outreach. Someone mentioned it earlier, getting us on FM radio in California, which is a little far from our neck of the woods, but we're happy to go on the radio anywhere. They'll let us. So the way that works is that some of the radio stations we're on, we have to pay to be on. That's why we have to raise money. Some of the radio stations air us for free, more community radio type vibe. So we're looking for any and all that would be interested in airing us because, the radio outreach is important. Folks who listen to us online, whether it's on YouTube or podcast or whatever, they found us for some reason, either the algorithm or, they came from another show we're affiliated with or heard us on another project or something. But chances are they are probably looking for labor content, maybe progressive labor content at that. Whereas radio folks, it could be the luck of the dial. Anyone could be tuning in. We air on a conservative talk station in Huntsville. It's the same one Sean Hannity started on. It airs all kinds of right-wing vitriol on a daily basis that I find personally pretty offensive. But a lot of people listen to that station, right? And if we want to get our message out there, it's important to try to reach some of those audiences. We air on a historic black radio station in Muscle Shoals area. Very different audience than, WVNN. But again, it's important to try to reach different demographics, different groups. So I think that's like a big piece of the potential is just expanding our radio footprint. I think, there's also a lot of opportunity in expanding the content we do, like Spanish language content is something that I've been really interested in for a long time. We can talk a little bit more about that and like why, but that also seems like an obvious area where it'd be cool to expand. We've got a lot of other ideas we've bounced around over the years. We have done live in-person events over the years. We've done fundraisers over the years. We've raised like $85,000 for strike funds for workers in the South. And, I'm really proud of that because we're a pretty small outfit, all things considered. But that speaks to the power of the audience that we do have, right? I know we don't have the biggest audience, but the folks that do listen and do engage with us, y'all are good folks who really make a difference and carry this a long way. And that's, so for me, lots of cool things we could do. We could expand the radio footprint. We could get into Spanish language content. We could have bigger guests. We could have a bigger audience, of course. But I think that's really going to lean on our listeners just helping grow this thing and talking to more folks about it, spreading the word to more people, sharing it with their social networks. It's all word of mouth, really. We don't run advertisements of the program, right? We don't have the money to put up billboards on the interstate advertising the Valley Labor Report. Right-wing radio, they do that, right? Like, I don't know about where you're listening from, but down here in Alabama, they definitely do that. They have the funds to do that kind of thing, and we don't. But we've done a lot just through the grassroots word of mouth outreach, and I think that the more we can grow that, the sky's the limit on how far this can grow, and hopefully get on more radio stations and, grow the online audience. And I think another big piece of potential is collaboration with other projects like this. We are part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a network of labor radio and podcast shows. Folks who do stuff like what me and Jacob do every week. And the shows vary in what they are, their subject matter, their geography. But there are other folks out there doing labor media. And I think the more we work together and collaborate, the stronger we'll all be. And so I'm proud that we're part of that network. And I want to see how we can expand that, grow that. And I want to see how we can really work with Means TV because we're excited to be on that platform. Workers and working people, we need our own platforms. We can't rely on big tech and the big corporations. We've got to have our own media that is by working people and for working people. And so I think, there's a lot of potential there in collaborating with other projects like ours.
If y'all are able to grow, if other labor media was able to grow, how do you think that would change things for workers in the South? I think it would clear the ground a little bit for organizing, both in the workplace and in, from the workplace to the State House, basically. The more labor media we have, the more our stories are being told, the more our voices are being amplified, the more people are hearing these things, and it counteracts the negative messaging that people are bombarded with. Because people, between the right-wing propaganda machine and the corporate media, there's not a lot of pro-worker content that the average person gets to consume from media.
You don't hear a lot of stories of working folks banding together, fighting the boss, taking on the politicians, and winning a better life for themselves and their communities. We need to tell those stories. So I think the more we have labor media, not just us, but all the folks who are doing good work in this space, the more we have this in the South in particular, it's really, really important because there's such an anti-union bigotry that is, prevalent in the South. But there's a lot of research to show that it hasn't fully, consumed people, right? The average person isn't necessarily anti-union in Alabama or the South, even though they've heard more anti than positive messaging. It's, really a relatively blank slate because most people, frankly, are just kind of uninformed and just don't know a whole lot about unions, what they are, or why they're even relevant to them. So we have an opportunity, if we grow labor media, to step into that void, to do that kind of education, to get people engaged and get people connected to a broader movement. And, I think, not to speak for Jacob, but I certainly see this project as connected to the organizing work that we're doing and, the power building we're trying to do in our community.
You had mentioned Spanish language content before. Why is that a priority?
Yeah, I think there's just a void. I think I'm not an expert on Spanish language labor content, but I don't think there's enough of it based on what I can tell. There are good folks doing good work in that space already, but we need to reach all demographics. And I recognize that we are not reaching that demographic with the Valley Labor Report. Folks who are speaking Spanish, probably aren't tuning in. But there's a lot of information that we're sharing that's relevant to all working people. And so we are definitely interested in working with folks who could fund such a project and partner with us on such a project to get pro-labor, pro-worker messaging and information and education out there to Spanish-speaking audiences because it's the fastest-growing demographic. It's, particularly folks working in service and construction, lots of industries that either have unions or need unions. So there's just a lot of potential there, I think, honestly.
And what do you think you're most excited about doing if you got some more support?
I think the thing that's most exciting beyond just, the idea of maybe we can get more people involved is the ability to talk to more folks on the show. Because we've really hosted some amazing conversations with people. Like, I don't take it lightly that I can email pretty much anyone in the world and be like, hey, I have a show. Do you want to come on this show and talk about whatever you're doing? And a lot of times it actually works. I mean, we've gotten some fairly, high profile guests for just a couple of union guys in Alabama doing this on the side. So I'm excited about that. But I also don't ever want us to lose touch with the rank and file voices. And so I really appreciate getting calls and voicemails from folks. And I think that is the most exciting thing, if we could grow the calls and voicemails. I used to be a pretty frequent listener of sports talk radio. Jacob has always been a big listener of political talk radio, and I listened to that some too over the years, but I listen to more sports talk radio. And of course, Paul Feinbaum is a legend in that space because of the callers. People aren't really all that interested in what Paul has to say. It's about the callers, right? And the characters that call in and the discussions that come out of that, and getting to hear from people from, wherever, these little towns across the South. And so I have really enjoyed that part of this project, getting to hear from folks who, take time out of their day to leave us a voicemail or to give us a call. And I think that's the most interesting thing we could grow, is more engagement in that space. Because we, just today we had someone break some news to me about organizing success in North Carolina. And I think there's not a lot of platforms for folks to do that. You can call into talk shows and talk about Alabama football, but where else are you calling in to talk about fighting your boss or winning a grievance or flipping a school board election or whatever is going on in your community? So I think that's what excites me, is the potential to hear from more people.
And why does the Valley Labor Report need the support of listener donations and sponsorships?
Yeah. Like I said, we do have cost associated with this project. We pay to be on commercial radio. We pay folks who perform labor for the project. So we do have to raise money, and, it's a constant hustle, and we do rely on, a combination of advertising sponsorships. So in the first half of the program, you hear those commercials from those unions and union side law firms and others, and we really appreciate that. It makes a big difference. And our single biggest source is the listener donations, people chipping in at a few bucks at a time. And, if you have anything you can chip in, whether it's one time or monthly, it goes a long way. It makes a big difference. We're able to do what we can to stay on the air and to grow it and expand the audience. So, we don't get big checks from corporations. We don't have George Soros funding us, despite what folks may believe. I've never heard from him, believe it or not. I've been doing all this activist stuff for all these years. George Soros has never written me a check.
He hasn't called yet.
He has not called me yet. I don't know. Maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But we're out here just trying to, do it the good old-fashioned, honest way, and hope that you'll appreciate what we do. We don't charge for any of our content. We put it all out there for free. Because we just want to get it out there to people and start conversations and get folks talking about labor and the power of working people when we come together and we organize. So yeah, that's why we do ask for donations. We ask for sponsorships. We can't do it otherwise. It does take money to run media, and that's why there's less labor media than there used to be, because it is a hard space to be in. But yeah, I hope that you bear with us when we ask for money when we do, because it takes it to run it.
And beyond donating, what are the most important ways listeners can engage with and support the Valley Labor Report?
Yeah, I think what I mentioned earlier about the calls and the voicemails, that goes a long way, because it allows working people to be heard by other working people. But just, liking and sharing and subscribing, go on the podcast apps, give us a 5-star review, little stuff like that. It helps. It helps get us out there to more people. But yeah, talk to people about it. Talk to people at your local union. Bring it up at a meeting. Let people know what we're doing, and let people know how they can get involved with it, right? Because if your local wants to come on our show, all you got to do is let us know. If you've got a cool organizing story that you want to share, you can call in at any time. You can let us know about that. If it's something that you think needs or warrants a longer interview, let us know. We do this to try to amplify working people's voices, to get important stories told. So yeah, the more you can just tell people that and share that with folks through your networks, through word of mouth, the more we can grow this thing. And yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
Yeah, so wanted to wrap up with that. Just kind of we started a conversation around Labor Day, Jacob and I, talking about a little bit of the history of the project and what we've done, and wanted to finish that conversation today, looking ahead at what we could do if we had more support. I know from talking with other people in the labor, radio, and podcast space that most of us are doing this on shoestring budgets, if we even have budgets in some cases. And, there used to be a time in this country where labor had a robust media ecosystem. We had labor newspapers here in Alabama, local newspapers. Multiple labor papers. There used to be albums that were made about strikes. Right, whole albums cut about particular strikes. all kinds of labor media that we used to have in this country, and we've gotten away from it over the generations as labor has declined. And I don't want to, over exaggerate and say that, media is more important than organizing, because it's not. If unions have a bunch of extra money, they should spend it on organizing. But if they have any extra left over, they should spend it on media too, because we have to get our message out there. We know we can't rely on mainstream media. We know we can't rely on the propaganda machine that's out there that is so prevalent in so many people's lives. Social media is, a crapshoot at best. And so, we've got to build our own infrastructure, get our voices heard, by building our own media. So that's why we do what we do. And I really appreciate everyone hanging out with us today. Hopefully it's been a good show. I know it's a little different without Jacob here, but did my best. Appreciate Whitney hanging out with me in the studio. We got some good stuff planned for the next couple of weeks. I know Jacob will be back with you next weekend. I know he's got some good stuff planned. And again, don't forget to subscribe to Means TV. You can use our code TVLR for 20% off. Don't forget to follow us online anywhere you can find anything at the Valley Labor Report. TVLR.fm is the website. And Whitney, you have any final words before we wrap?
No, great to be on the show today. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for tuning in, folks. All power to the workers. Solidarity forever, y'all.